Okay, welcome to Dominoes vs. Machines Round 9 Daily Vlogs. Okay, so the first clip we're starting with is one that actually looks kind of similar to the first clip that I started with last year. In the sense that it's this sort of diagonally structured thing with a ball thrower at the back. So, what is the idea here? I was inspired by the idea of jump rope, of something sort of bouncing or jumping up and down, and then something passing underneath on every jump. And I thought it would be really cool to do that with a bouncing ping pong ball and having a track sort of scoop underneath it on every bounce, so it's always jumping rope as it rolls down. Or actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. That was only the concept, and then I thought how that could be done would be if this structure was in the shape of a U, like, the shape of a jump rope, except not rope, so it's a static shape. And then this is affixed to wheels so that it could roll down a slope, and that would be a way of making it sort of... Because a bouncing ball is really hard to... It's hard to make a bouncing ball unless it's bouncing forward in some way, unless it's going somewhere. And so that would mean that the jump rope would have to move with the ball. So really the only way to do that would be with a rolling track thing. So yeah, that's what I've spent today doing. This is one of those tricks where it's really hard to know if you're on the right track, because basically anything you do might be completely nullified by a later change you make. Right? So like I had to commit to the height of this track thing. I had to commit to the slope. I had to commit to the length. And those were all basically guesses. They were educated guesses, but still, there's no way of knowing if a more optimal choice could have been made, because I'm just going to work around the decision that I was forced to make, because I had to start somewhere. And I'm probably not even going to know. Like I said, it's impossible to know if a better decision could have been made. It's just never going to occur to me that, this problem would have been solved if I had made a different decision 30 steps back, right? So that's where we're at. I got to the point where I at least convinced myself it was possible. That was the goal, is just get enough of it built where I could sort of do a lot of it manually, of like releasing the track thing and releasing the ball thrower. And it does work. Like it's very rough, but I have somewhat consistently been able to make the ball bounce over the track. I'm still calling it the rope, the jump rope, every time it rolls down. And I had to make these marks on the table in black tape to sort of approximate where the ball needed to bounce, which lines up with where the track is in its upright position. So the ball needs to contact the table when the track is up, so that way it's actually in the air when the track is down, if that makes sense. So I need two hands to demonstrate the whole thing, and I'm holding the camera with one hand. But I can do things sort of in parts here. So here's the track rolling down. And this extra little spin at the end is not going to happen. It's only there because, again, this is very rough. I need to make some magnet thing to actually catch it, and then some way of catching the ball, and that's all down the line. But that's the jump rope part, and then bouncing ball is just a bouncing ball. I don't think I need to demonstrate that. So yeah, the next step is to really start securing stuff down and making more commitments. This is not secured at all. This is all just kind of... actually, the thrower is secured to this, but it's not secured to the table or anything. I just kind of threw some stuff under there to make the right height and just play around with the angle and stuff like that. So get stuff secured down is the next step. And then what my vision is eventually for the entire thing is that there will be some sort of cup or funnel or, I don't know, barrier or something that will make the ball land in this position, and then it would roll down the track. I haven't figured out how that's going to happen yet because the track isn't sloped. And then I'm going to try to carve out an indentation in the track so that once it gets to this side, it just rolls off. So that's my vision for the rest of that. But this is further down the line. So I have hope that this is possible. So that's a good place to stop for the day. It is day 2 of the jump rope Pong shot trick. And it doesn't look like a lot has been done, but a lot of progress has been made. This is one of those tricks that isn't structurally all that complicated. There aren't actually a lot of actual things to build, but it takes a long time because, as I said yesterday, it really takes a lot of trial and error for one, but also just like very precise orientations and setups for things, and it takes a lot of time to make sure that every decision you make isn't going to affect other decisions. So, for instance, there are a ton of variables like the height of the ball thrower and the direction of the ball thrower, the distance away from the target, how much weight is here, where the weight is actually placed on here, and then the timing of that with the actual, jump rope thing that's the track, and then the timing of when they actually get released, the timing of when they bounce, and when the track is in the upright position. And then I decided I wanted to add these, which highlights more plainly, they really draw your eye to the actual bounce locations of the ball, so make it much more obvious, okay, this is where the ball is going to bounce. And I didn't have a block like this one, which is just a normal cube or rectangle. I had to use one of these with an arch in it, and I didn't really want the viewer to see that. And so since it'll be filmed from this angle, I decided to hide it as much as possible. But that means putting this bounce platform at kind of a weird angle. And then I decided I kind of liked that, the way that they are all... So I decided to make all of them kind of weird angles to make it look sort of like stepping stones, sort of placed haphazardly. I don't know, it looks nice, I think. But yes, so I've gotten to the point now where the ball bounces down onto the 3 bounce platforms and into the cup. Now, usefully, this cup doesn't actually move. The cup is always here. It's just the track that moves. So if I move the track out of the way... Oh, that's the other thing I did today, is I put magnets on here and then down here so that when it comes in, and it comes in really quickly, it just locks in. So that was actually a pretty simple thing to do. But so now this starts up here, and I don't know if I'll be able to do this with one hand. I'll see if I can get the timing, because it turns out actually that this getting released and this getting released as well with this lever down here, it needs to happen basically at the exact same time for the timing to be right. So I'll see if I can get close with one hand. But what should happen is the ball should sort of jump rope as it bounces on the 3 platforms. So every bounce, this travels underneath it. And I can't guarantee that it'll land exactly in the cup, but you'll at least be able to see, oh, I can see why that might work. I can see that it's close and that it would work eventually. Okay, so let's see if I can do this. Ready? Here we go. Okay, yeah, the timing was completely off. I wasn't quick enough. But I'll do it separately so maybe you can tell. Maybe. I'll just try to do it by hand. It's really hard to give you an idea of whether it works or not when it's really a 1 in 100 type thing. Or maybe not that bad, but maybe more like 1 in 10. But yeah, so if you can at least believe me, I guess, if I get the timing right and with the perfect bounce, it's synchronized so that the ball bounces when the track is in the upright position, and then the track passes underneath it on every bounce, like it's jumping rope. And that's the whole point. So what's there left? The outgoing track is going to be one of these, just right here. And that's going to lead to, I think, a line of dominoes. And then what I have to build is some way of releasing the track, which shouldn't be too hard, and a way of sort of removing that release mechanism at the same time as pulling down on this to release the ball thrower. So that's a pretty basic step. That's should not be a very difficult thing to do. And then just build the transition. That's the whole trick. That's the whole clip. So this should be done by tomorrow, I would say. So today was one of the most exhausting and most frustrating days of building I've had in a very long time. And as of recording this, I'm actually in a bit of a better mood because I just told myself I wouldn't stop building today until I got to a point where this at least seemed possible. And we did get there, but it's midnight now, which is much later than I'm usually building. So what happened yesterday to cause such a drastic change in mood? Yesterday we left off where I was like, okay, looks good. I've gotten it to work. I'm pretty convinced, or I got it to work when releasing things by hand and doing things manually. And it seemed totally possible. And then today, everything changed. So I did make one change to start the day, which may have caused the problem. I'm not sure. It was kind of a decision I made, in the downtime between build sessions where I was just sort of thinking about it. And I realized that I didn't like that the cup that the ball lands in was affixed to the table. I think it's more elegant and much more interesting if the cup is attached to the track itself, right? Because then the whole trick becomes, the ball and the track, this whole unit, do this whole dance where they avoid each other in perfect synchronicity for this entire duration until the very end where they meet in perfect synchronicity in this really perfect way. And to have the cup already in that position and then just the track sliding underneath it, it felt a little bit less elegant. Like it felt like it's much cooler to have the cup arrive right in this position at a split second before the ball enters. So that was a change I made right away, first thing. But what that did was it made it so that the track itself takes up more room when it's in the upright position, meaning the ball it doesn't have as much room to bounce without hitting it, right? Because that's important. It can't hit the cup as it's bouncing. And so I won't go into too much detail about the specifics, but basically the problem is that the ball bounces really, really high. It actually bounces higher than the highest point of the track. So at its highest point, the track is around here, right, where my finger is. But at its highest point, the ball is at this level. So it actually goes above where the track is, meaning, and this I figured wouldn't be a problem, right? Because obviously you want the ball to be at the bottom. You want it to be bouncing on the table or on the bounce platforms when this track is in the high position, right? You'd never have both of them at the highest position at the same time, except it's really tough to make that work with the timing, it turns out, because even as it's kind of coming, even as the track is coming up, the ball is bouncing through it, right? I don't know why it's a problem. I think it's just that the timing isn't perfectly synchronized. It's not as though when the track is perfectly vertical like this, the ball is bouncing, and when the track is perfectly vertical like this, the ball is in the air. It doesn't quite work out like that, because obviously, in order for things to mesh at the end, the ball and the track have to be at the bottom at the same time. But of course, the entire way down, you want them to be out of phase. They need to be out of phase. The ball needs to be on the table while the track is in the air. But they also need to get close. The timing needs to get closer and closer and closer, so that by the end they actually land on the table at the same time. And so I don't know why I didn't realize that, and that's been a big problem. And then, like I said, it was, the cup gets in the way, so that's part of it too. But I don't know how. Actually, do I even mention how much trouble I had with figuring out how to release the dang thing? Yeah, I guess. So yesterday I left off by saying all I got to do is figure out a way to release the track. Shouldn't be too hard. And dude, it shouldn't have been. It really shouldn't. It was, I don't know, I went through 8 different designs. You can see here there's some kind of compression release. There was an adjustable compression release. There's the remnants of all kinds of other levers over here. This is the third positioning of this thing. I had stuff mounted to the side here. I just couldn't figure out a way to hold the track in the right position. And again, we go back to the same thing that was a problem for the whole thing, which is you got to commit to something and then make the other variables work around it. And then, which I haven't mentioned yet, the other problem with tricks like this is that you can't ever know whether the way a trick behaves is just a random fluke, or if that's how it's just going to do, or if that's just how it's going to behave. And you have to make decisions based on a very small sample size, or you're going to end up testing for hours upon hours, only to just end up changing stuff anyway. So you have to make decisions based on 1 or 2 very quick tests and then make an adjustment. And you can't really know if those 1 or 2 tests are an accurate representation of what would happen if you were to do 100 tests from that exact positioning. So it makes things really tough to get right. Also, these are now lower because, again, that same issue where it was bouncing too high. So every time I changed these, I had to change the, and this thing sometimes would launch too far. So I've been sliding this weight back and forth, which is why I made it like that so that I could do that. So luckily that was at least something I planned ahead about. But my God, this thing, I don't know what happened yesterday, or between yesterday and today, but this is just, it's been a long, long day. But like I said, I said I wasn't going to stop today until I got it to a point where I convinced myself it's possible, and I have done so. I have now gotten these strings into position. They are set up to be pulled at the exact same time, and that releases the track and the ball thrower at the same time. And if I do that, it doesn't, I haven't gotten it to work yet, but I can the ball will come in and it'll bounce off the rim, or it'll bounce off the rim, or it'll miss to the side or just slightly over, or I've gotten it to a point where it fails in the same almost successful way. And that's it's not, well, actually it's not always the same, but it's always almost successful. And that's all I care about. That convinces me that it's going to be possible with the current arrangement of variables. All right, that's all I'm going to talk about for the day. I am ready to move on. Day 4. So, I don't normally do updates after I get the trick to work, but in this case, I really think I have to, because a ton of stuff had to change during the filming process while I was actually trying to get the working take. Let's start with the basics. The end part has been affixed to the table, and we have an out transition, and we have an in transition. Now for the more complicated stuff. The first thing you'll notice, these two dominoes here. These are for the timing of releasing the track and releasing the ball thrower. I used to have it where these strings were tied together, and the idea was that they would get pulled at the same time, and the release of the track and the ball thrower would be synchronized. They'd happen at the same time, and it would just be much easier to do it with a single string pull from a single falling domino. It's been such a long day of trying to get this thing to work that I don't remember exactly why I had to change it, but suffice to say, it wasn't working where it would just be a single string pull. I eventually had to concede that this was only ever going to work if one was released before the other. In this case, the track is released before the ball thrower. So that's this, and this is actually constructed in a way that allows me to adjust the timing on the fly as I'm changing other variables. So nothing here is actually attached to the table, and actually, like I said, the clip has already worked, so I don't feel like I need to be super careful about messing anything up. So this is actually able to slide along like this, which allows me to adjust the timing as the ball rolls down the track. So the ball comes in like this and hits these levers to knock over the dominoes. And by adjusting, from side to side, I can add, fractions of a second in either direction to change the timing like that. And this isn't actually glued down for that reason, to allow me to do that. The next thing that was changed is the release for the track. Yet again, like I said, I went through, I want to say 8 different release mechanisms, and here's yet another, because the one that I had before wasn't working. At some point in the building process, in the development process, I kind of forgot that in order for this trick to really work, the track had to be synchronized with the bounce in a specific way. I just eventually started testing so many different variables of reset positions that I forgot that I should actually pay attention to what is most likely to actually work, which is to line it up so that the down position, I'm just going to move it, the down position is in between the bounce platforms, and the up position is aligned with the platforms. Now, it's not totally perfect, because like I said yesterday, they have to mesh at the end, and the down position and the bounce position have to be in the same place. But at least for the first couple, why not start it in a way that actually makes sense? And so that's why it actually starts kind of like this, as opposed to completely vertical, like I had it yesterday. And then, so that's 2 changes, this thing and the release mechanism. The third thing that I had to change was the slope of the tracks, which seems like a totally integral part of the trick. It seems like something I decided on day 1. I think, actually, I did say on day 1 that this trick is one of those things where you just have to commit to certain variables and then work around them, and I'm never going to really think all the way back to a decision I made 30 steps ago, oh man, that was probably a bad idea, I should change that. Turns out I did. I eventually realized that, okay, the track is simply rotating, it's rolling down too fast, and so the timing is getting thrown off, even when it's synchronized at the beginning and the bounce is happening right when I want it to happen. It's just the track is rotating too fast, so even if that's perfect, the ball is bouncing up and hitting the track as it's rotating in the second rotation. And if it works in the second, or it won't ever work in the second, because it gets a hit on the first. But if it makes it past the first, it gets hit on the second. And so, I guess I just realized this after trying it enough times and exhausting all of the variables, to the point where I realized there is no setup that works. It kind of felt like at least at first, it was just a matter of honing in on the perfect middle ground of all the variables where everything just kind of works. But it's a fallacy to assume that there is a middle ground, because sometimes there just isn't. Sometimes changing one of the variables changes everything else so much that like you can never get all of the variables to line up perfectly, and you'll never get everything to work all in one, right? And that was definitely the case here. Like I could change the starting position of where this thing started. Like I could change, maybe it's here, maybe it's here, maybe it's here, maybe it's here, so on. But I realized like just the sheer speed of it, it doesn't matter. It's going too fast. Doesn't matter how I set it up. It's never going to work. So anyway, that's this trick in the books. It has worked. So that's why I'm in a much better mood now. Honestly, the working take kind of came out of nowhere. I was in the middle of just yet again running experiments and changing variables to see, all right, let's change another thing and try to hone in on something that looks promising. And I wasn't really expecting a working take yet, and then it just happened. And I am ecstatic that it happened, because honestly, I did not want to stay up all night trying to get a working take on this. 72 fails is plenty. But yeah, this is a really cool trick. It took a while to convince myself that it's actually cool, that I actually like it. Like, I knew I liked the concept of it. I love the concept of the ball bouncing over the track like a jump rope. But I just didn't know if it would telegraph on camera. I didn't know if it would really come across and you'd really be able to see what's happening. Because again, like I was saying in the previous updates, it's impossible to film this thing. Because if you film it from here, you can't tell that it's a track because it's, the front edge of it is completely blocking it. If you film it from here, you can't see the bounce platforms. You can't see where the ball is bouncing. If you film it from here, you're never going to get it all in frame. It's just I figured it was just so impossible to film that you would never, and like, you can't film it from way over here because then you don't get the depth perception. You can't tell that the ball is actually traveling. You can't really tell that the ball is passing in front of and behind the track as it's going. It just kind of looks like it's bouncing. I don't know. You need to be able to tell that it's actually jumping rope, kind of like the track is passing underneath every bounce. But you also can't film it from here because then the actual rails block everything. So I eventually just settled on a position right around here-ish, and this seemed to be pretty good. Anyway, that's enough of this clip. Moving on. It is day 1 of the next Dominoes vs. Machines clip, and this one is a gear trick. It's also a double pendulum trick, but we'll get to that. This is an idea I've had for, I think, 2 years now. I actually tried building this for Dominoes vs. Machines round 7 2 years ago, and it didn't actually work, but it ended up. So I started building it, and then it wasn't going to work. But the thing I had built ended up materializing into one of my favorite clips in the video, which is that weird flexing ball carrier system that like spins around, and it looks pretty cool. So that was my attempt at building this, and now I'm building it for real, and this time I'm actually getting somewhere. So the idea involves gears plus double pendulum, and I think it's the first one that actually takes both of those concepts and melds them together into something. So the root concept is that when you have two planetary gears, one which is one gear rotating around the other one, separated by any gear of any size, but this just so happens to be the most discrete, what you end up with is a gear that perfectly imitates the motion of the other. So if one is parallel to the table, this one will stay parallel to the table as well, and that's because of this gear in the middle. Now, that motion might look familiar if you're familiar with flexograms or flexing parallelograms. That's exactly the kind of motion you can get with a flexing parallelogram as well. And so that inspired this idea of like, what if you did a flexing parallelogram and this sort of parallel gear motion thing together with a double pendulum and had this track here stay level to the table due to a flexing parallelogram, which is this whole structure in the back, right? So you can see this gear is staying level to the table, right? Which is important. And then you had this other gear, which will stay parallel to the table as well, as a result of this one staying parallel to the table. And then you did a whole double pendulum out of it, right? So this, it doesn't actually work at this point, but I can sort of kind of get it to kind of work. So if I release it, I want it to start here so I can actually roll a ball over the two tracks, but the weight distribution is all wrong. If I let it go now, it just doesn't. Well, that wasn't supposed to. That's exactly what I want. But it had never done that before. Okay. Well, all right, let's see if it does it again. Yeah, that's what it was doing before. So I got to play around with the weights. And maybe not that much because it just worked by a complete accident. But that's the idea, right? Is I want it to do a double pendulum motion, but without this track ever leaving the parallel position, which is something you don't see with normal double pendulum tricks. You know, the track that swings around always, swings around and then it's upside down and then it lands upside and then it lands right side up. So this is a weird way, way of doing it that you don't actually really ever see that much or ever, where all the tracks actually stay parallel to the table the whole time, but it still does that kind of swingy loop-de-loop type double pendulum motion. So yeah, like I said, I got to still mess around with the weights to make sure it actually lands in the right position like I want. But I think it's coming along quite nicely. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention is that I'm not totally sure about the placement on the table. I just did a temporary glue job here because I still might. I don't know if this is quite enough for one clip. It's cool, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's quite enough. So I might find some way of repeating it or doing it. I definitely repeating it some way. I don't know. I might just end up, if I get the thing to work with the weights and everything, and then I build the connections for it, and I just decide it's enough for a clip, I might just keep it. But at this point, I'm still leaning towards making another module and then either just doing it twice, which I'm really not a fan of because that just seems like what's the point, or in some way changing something and making it do something slightly different so that you get the setup and then you think it's going to do the same thing again, but it does something slightly different. And as I was playing around with it, actually, I realized that you could make this one rotate, and as long as it makes a full rotation by the time it lands here, it wouldn't change anything. You'd have this one that also rotates as it's doing the double pendulum. So I figured as this one's falling to the side, it does a full 360 before it lands somehow. I don't know if that would be done, but I guess it would be done through a string pull. But yeah, that's the only real idea I had. But I figured I would just start with making the basic module, and then if I like it and it didn't seem like enough for a full clip, I would maybe try to make another one and make it do something even cooler. But yeah, for now, I'm just going to try to get this one to work and then go from there. Okay, day 2 of this double pendulum gear motion thing. It was a bit of a bleak start today, but things are looking up as we're wrapping up the day. So let me explain. This is not how I thought the trick would start yesterday. I thought that it would start like this, right? They're lined up, and then you release it, it comes down and lands like that. That was the idea. It still lands like this, but the starting position is where they're one above the other, right? And that's just because it's not possible to get it to rotate all the way around from this position. it just collapses. There's no way to get the outside gear to make a full revolution. There's something about, this is like my lack of actual engineering knowledge here coming through, but there's something about the weight distribution. I think this might just be too heavy, or I don't know. That's all I can think of, because I've pretty much tried every other variable. But there's basically no way I can make this lighter. It's because K'NEX has such low tolerances, or high tolerances, I can never remember. Basically, everything is really, it's hard to get everything to be very, very precise. And so you need a lot of K'NEX and a lot of like bulk and weight to try to keep things constrained as much as possible. Notice I've had to double up, these rods here. And you notice that this has to be, an entire, come on, the camera can focus. Hello? There we go. This whole thing has to be a double rod system here. Then there needs to be this other rod here to hold the gear in place because the gear was skipping. And then notice all of these, this isn't to do with the weight, obviously, but to prove my point about, K'NEX having low tolerance. All of this stuff is just to try to constrain it from wobbling and twisting and stuff. So you need a lot of K'NEX, which makes it, pretty heavy. So there's basically no way I could make it lighter is my ultimate point here. So this is now the new starting position, and I'll demonstrate what it looks like. It's pretty smooth, and it just takes a little bit of a nudge from up top, and then it fails. Wait a sec. That's not good. That's not supposed to happen. What did I do wrong? What did I just change? Try again. Okay, now there you go. That's what it's supposed to look like. Okay, yesterday it accidentally worked, and today it accidentally failed. So, where to go from here? You've noticed I've added this pipe in, which connects the track that's usually in the starting position here, and then it would go down and underneath, and then I was going to put a track here, but it turns out that when this thing is swinging down, it basically passes right through this area. Not by a ton, but definitely enough that in order for it to clear, the track would have to be like this low, which is ultimately pointless. It does work if the track is like tilted like this, and then maybe once it passes, it can just tilt up. So I can at least have it high on this end, but I don't know if that's even what I want to do, because I thought I could do this as a somewhat of a timing trick where the ball would just kind of go along the top. Again, go along the top from left to right, make its way down on this side, go from right to left along the bottom, go through the tube, and then as it's going through the tube and then across some kind of connection track here, the whole thing would go, and then as it's making its way through, it would go across here from left to right. That was the idea, but I don't think that's actually possible, because if this track is missing, there needs to be some kind of, time for that track to get placed in, which is a whole other thing. I don't like doing this machine maintenance stuff of putting a track into place and, inserting and, maintaining. It's machine maintenance is what I call it. It's just the constant upkeep of just, shifting stuff around in order to get things to work. I think it's a little bit inelegant. And so I'm not a huge fan of this, having the track get placed here after the whole thing does the pendulum thing. But I might have to. But if I do have to, that means I can't have the ball just kind of make its way continuously throughout. There would need to be some kind of stopping point for it to have the time to put the track here. So, yeah, it's a whole mess. So I don't know what the actual path will be for the ball and stuff, but at least the double pendulum gear thing is working. If it wasn't already clear, this is going to be the whole trick. I'm not going to do a duplicate thing. I'm not going to do any complex stuff with having the gears rotate while they're double penduluming. Yeah, it just ended up being enough, I think, for a full clip. It'll be a good full length clip just by itself. But yeah, we'll see how things go tomorrow. I got a couple of challenges that I don't know how I'm going to solve, but nothing fundamentally worrisome. And, this is the fun part of machine building, right? Is solving these little problems. It's stressful when the problems are really big and like they threaten, the existence of the trick entirely. And like they make you worry that the entire thing isn't going to be possible. But these problems are not like that. These are just like little problems that are fun to solve. So nothing too bad. Day 3. It is day 3 of this trick, and you can tell by the looks of things that a lot of progress has been made. Now, the first big thing is that the height of the entire module had to be lifted up. Because remember yesterday I was having trouble with figuring out how I was going to get the ball from here to where the tracks land. And I said I couldn't do just a regular track segment because as the double pendulum swings down, it goes through this area down here, and I was going to have to figure out another way. I tried a bunch of other ways, and I didn't like any of them, and I had a couple more that didn't even work. To sum it up, I couldn't find something that worked and that I liked. So I just kept coming back to, is it possible at all to put a track here, even if it means making some pretty big changes? And I realized that it actually was if I lifted up the entire thing, right? So I couldn't move, I couldn't change the ratio of like the height and I don't know how to describe it. I could really just lift the entire thing up. I couldn't just lift a part of it because that would change, the weight distribution and, where it would land and all that sort of things. So I did end up just adding a little bit of extra height here. So it's actually a little bit taller. But anyway, it's hard to see that has been changed, but it has. So now when it swings down, it just barely makes it over this track, which is fine. It doesn't need to clear it by a long shot. So that's that. The other big thing is I've now installed the method by which the ball will move from the top to the bottom track. And then this, I changed from this to a clear pipe because it will match this. Just by appearance. It's still not exactly the same thing. But yeah, so this, let's reset. So we've got the two gears here. And now this balances up here. I still don't have a way of actually releasing it, but it does balance like that, which is how it'll be reset. And then this extends like that and then retracts when the time comes. And that retracts out of the way enough to let the gears go. So to get back to what I was talking about with machine maintenance, it was kind of, I mentioned it because of this track here. I didn't like the idea of having something fall into place or get installed. But I do have to do a little bit of machine maintenance here to remove the pipe. I have to slide it out of the way. But that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. So this now completely works, and I am just kind of figuring out, tomorrow's task will be figuring out the timing, how I'm actually going to release everything. Because obviously, or I guess maybe not obviously, this moving out of the way can't really be triggered by the ball itself. So that would need to be triggered by some external source. There's actually going to be an external source for, I think, pretty much everything. There's going to be an external source to release the ball, external source to move this out of the way, possibly even an external source to actually make them go down. But I might actually make it so that this causes that to happen when it retracts, if the timing works out with that. But I can actually kind of show how this should look. I can't really put everything, I can't really go across the top, but I can go across the bottom and then push it by hand, and you can tell that when the ball is kind of bouncing around in this cup, you can tell it kind of takes a little bit before it comes out. There's a tiny bit of a pause. Sometimes it's a little bit longer than that. Yeah, there's a small pause there, and that pause is when the gears go. And that's, so the ball is kind of in the cup as the bottom gear passes along here. So it doesn't actually kick the ball out while it's on the track, hopefully. All right, so if I can get the timing right by hand, here we go. Okay, come on. There we go. It's not quite as tight of a timing as I thought it would be. So that's good. But yeah, couple of more things to do, mostly just connections tomorrow. But this is a really cool clip. This is a really cool clip, and it's coming together nicely. All right, the last update for this clip. Not a lot has changed visually, but we weren't quite done the last time I did the update. So we've added the in track, and the only thing I really had to figure out was how I was going to control all of the actual movements that needed to happen. So the three things that needed to happen: ball needs to get released, this tube needed to slide out of the way, and of course the entire thing had to be triggered. So those are three inputs, and I wanted to have as few external inputs as possible, because that would just mean that multiple things are happening at the same time. You'd have the actual trick happening while also having some kind of timing system happen elsewhere to control the movements. And I didn't want to have any distraction, or I wanted to limit the amount of distractions. So I managed to make it so that the tube sliding out of the way is actually what causes the thing to flip and do the double pendulum, and that's controlled by this lever here. And that, I knew that was possible to make work mechanically, but I didn't know if it would work with the timing, and it ended up working out perfectly. I didn't actually even have to change anything, so it was a really easy implementation. The other thing is releasing the ball. Well, I guess I also, so that's one thing, is releasing the double pendulum with the lever, but I still have to release the tube sliding out of the way and the ball with external inputs. The first, obviously, that makes sense. That's how you start the whole trick. But yeah, the second one is the tube sliding out of the way, which is done with golf ball on track. So clip starts with golf ball rolling in. As it comes in, it hits this lever to knock over that domino, and that's what starts the whole thing. This goes through across the first track up here, down the tube, and then as the ball is exiting the tube, the ball is continuing to roll down, and then it's timed so that the ball reaches the end here, knocks off a weight to pull this, and this is what's holding the tube back. So without that in place, the tube slides out. So it's timed so that when the purple ball goes, I mean, this isn't the position of it, but you can, obviously the tube still works. When it exits the tube, so like right around here, that's when the tube slides back, and that's when the entire thing flips. So I am basically done with all the hard stuff. The only thing left to do is set up the camera, figure out what, camera angle will work best for this clip, and then tailor the outro, the out transition for whatever camera angle it ends up being. Right now it's just this track, and then I'll have to build whatever kind of swirly-whirly path that I want that will work best with the transition and camera angle. It's not just going to be a straight line out, I don't think. I want to do some kind of thing where it like maybe comes down and then does a little snake up. I don't know, just a little bit of extra flavor. But yeah, this is a finished clip, basically. All right, it is day one of the next Dominoes versus Machines clip. And this one is an idea that I had for centrifugal force tricks, and then I almost started making it before, luckily, realizing that it isn't really a centrifugal force trick, despite involving rotation and spinning, and the forces that come along with that. But it really is only a Newton's first law trick, in the sense of like things in motion stay in motion. It doesn't really use any centrifugal force, but it's a really cool idea, and it works well for this video. So it involves a spinning platform and a billiard ball chain. So obviously the billiard ball chain activates, and then the platform spins and it resets the balls. So as it spins, it's going to press the balls against these I guess, poles, right? And I haven't put in all of them. There are still more balls and more. I've put in half of them, and tomorrow I'll work on putting in the rest of the ball holders and stuff. So it's really only half done, but you can at least see the concept. So the balls get pressed against these poles, and then when the thing stops, they keep rolling because they want to keep moving, and so they'll keep rolling right back to their reset position. So I'll demonstrate that now. Just like that. And then they can be activated again. I mean, it's only going to happen once in the actual machine, but it didn't work on the purple one that time. But the idea is that it just can reset itself, sort of. But again, yeah, this isn't really centrifugal force. Hey, what's wrong with you? So that's the idea. I've had some pretty good luck with getting these 3 to work, despite the 2 tests you just saw. So I'll see if I can get just as lucky with the other 3 balls that I have to install tomorrow. But actually, it needs to spin a lot less fast than I thought it might, and for a lot less time, or fewer spins than I thought it would take. So it'll actually be, hopefully, pretty trivial to actually just pull a string and rotate the thing. I mean, you could pretty much do it for, like, a half rotation, and it kind of just works. Let's see. Again, purple doesn't work, but see, the other 2 work perfectly fine after only 3/4 of a rotation. So I think I'll probably do more than that, just to exaggerate it, and to really get the effect of the hypnotic swirl that I put on the top here, even though it doesn't really need that many rotations. So yeah, a lot of the time today was spent making the arts and crafts part, I guess. I decided, or I was debating for a while whether I wanted the ball paths to actually be straight, because there are 6 of them, and it forms a hexagon. And I was deciding whether I wanted the ball paths between each of the points to be straight lines, like the sides of a hexagon, or if I wanted them to actually follow the curvature of the circular disc. And I decided that I actually wanted it to follow the curvature, because I think that looks a little bit better, and it would be a little easier to make if I had the materials for it. And it turns out I did. I had the perfect amount of tubing, which I'm using as the outer guardrail. This is the same tubing that I used in centrifugal force tricks for the outer guardrail of the bigger, larger spinning disc. And then the inside is actually the lid to a cookie tin, but it has all kinds of Christmas decorations on it. You can see kind of the outside of a Christmas tree here. So I decided to cover it up, and I didn't just want to cover it with white, because I felt like it would look weird if it's just a white circle. And I figured what better thing to sort of emphasize the circular spinning motion than one of these like hypnotic swirl things. So I think it looks pretty cool when it rolls around. And it'll also be a signifier to the viewer that the platform will spin, right? And sometimes machine tricks are all about telegraphing what the motion will be, right? If you have a giant hammer that's kind of elevated in the air, even though people aren't thinking actively about what's going to happen in the trick, they see a hammer and they know it's going to hit something. It's going to fall and hit something. That's a way of telegraphing to the viewer. Same thing with using these pointer hands. That's why these are so nice. It's because even without realizing it, just seeing this tells the viewer that it's going to push or hit something, press a button maybe. Right? And so things that telegraph what actions are going to occur in the machine can be really useful, because they take the load off the viewer, and they don't have to actually actively think about what's going to happen, because they understand it right away. And so seeing this spiral thing, it indicates right away, without even thinking, this platform is going to spin. So that's a cool extra bonus, but it also just really looks cool. So yeah, this is coming along nicely. I expect that I will run into some problems tomorrow. I have no problems to report today. Smooth sailing completely. But as the trick develops a little bit more, I expect to run into a couple more roadblocks, especially with finding a speed that works for all the balls, and just like fine-tuning the stopping points so that, one rotation can reset all of them and none of them, bounce out or anything. Might be a little bit tough, but we'll see. Okay, exciting day today, even though not a lot has been actually built. I have some pretty big updates. So, a couple of things have changed. The biggest thing, is that the base of this whole spinning system is no longer this thing, which, probably doesn't look familiar because you couldn't really see it even in the last update, but that was what everything was originally rotating on. Now, I have, well, it's completely in the darkness, but it's a different system. It's a different ball bearing. You can maybe kind of see the ball bearings under there. It's a different ball bearing system, which has lower friction than the original, which is why it doesn't really matter that it was high friction before, because it didn't need to go very fast to begin with. But I was having trouble with consistency. When I installed the other new thing, the pulley system, or I guess the string system that revolves around the base to actually make it rotate, I was having trouble making it land in a consistent spot. Because I also noticed yesterday, I don't know if I mentioned this trick works best to reset the balls when it just like decelerates slowly, as opposed to like spinning around and then stopping immediately, which seems counterintuitive, right? Because the whole objects in motion thing is like you want the balls to rotate with the disc, and then the disc will stop suddenly, and the balls will continue rotating. However, if you do that, you have to have the speed so perfect that the ball just has the perfect amount of speed to perfectly go this way and perfectly make it over the bump and perfectly land right behind it without bouncing off and then going back. Because again, I don't know if I ever mentioned this actually, but these are resting behind a miniature popsicle stick, and they're resting against the two poles in the back that stand up vertically. But it's very precise because it needs to be able to be moved off by just a small tap, right? Because it obviously needs to operate as a billiard ball chain. And so if you're trying to reset the balls by having the disc spin around really quickly and then stop so that the balls go all the way back like this, I happened to get it perfect that time. But it's tough to get that just right. Unless the wheel decelerates slowly while the balls continue on with their speed. So if the balls are still traveling faster than how fast the disc is rotating, they're going to still go this way, but it just means that speed difference slowly shrinks. So as the wheel is rotating, the ball is meeting up with it, and it's a lot easier to get it to land in this very precise position. And we'll see that when I demonstrate it. But what that means is that I can't actually stop the disc. It means the disc has to slowly come to a stop by itself. And so the way I came up with to do that is actually just have a weight fall off the table, and then as it, when it reaches the bottom point, it's going to continue winding up the string in the other direction, right? So actually I gotta unwind this to show you. So the string comes along and it unwinds, and then after a certain point, it's going to continue rotating and it's going to wind up in the opposite direction. And that's going to pull the weight up. And what's that going to do? Well, that's going to slow down the wheel. And that's exactly what we want to do. So the weight falls to make the wheel spin, and then to decelerate the wheel slowly, it starts to lift the weight up again. And I'm going to have to figure out a way to make it stop at precisely the exact moment where it stops by itself, which might be a bit of a challenge because it might not be perfectly consistent. That'll be a challenge for tomorrow. But I have figured out a way of stopping it, or it does work if I just stop it manually by hand. So that's kind of all I care about for the moment. So let me actually demonstrate this. Let's see if I can wind it up. It's hard to do with one hand. Yeah, it's not going to happen with one hand. I'll just see if I can sort of demonstrate it. So again, yesterday I didn't have all of the balls in, but now I have all of them, and they activate in a circle as you'd expect. Right, and then if we rotate it, I wish I could show this the way it's meant to be, but I have to reset it, and that's not something I can do with one hand, so. All right. All right, so if I can sort of approximate it, ready? That wasn't perfect, but again, this is just me doing it by hand. Let's see if I can get it better. I'll get it. I'll get it. Oh, there we go. Somehow they all land perfectly that time. But that's the general idea. It's not really a great representation because that's not really what the trick is going to look like. But the other thing for tomorrow, in addition to figuring out how to stop the wheel, is going to be figuring out how to actually activate the balls, right? Because I'm going to need something to come in from off the disc, like on the table, something that's secured to the table, to come in and, flip one of the balls or push one of the balls to make the wheel or to make the disc activate. You didn't see that. That was weird, but and that's going to be difficult because I haven't really figured out the pathing of the whole system, the whole trick yet. It seems like the most reasonable reset position is this, to have the reds on the left and the right. But I don't know whether I want to activate the red and then have it end with purple, or if I want to activate the green and have it end with red. And then I don't know what I'm going to do in the second orientation either. So that'll be a challenge for tomorrow, but some good updates today, and things are moving smoothly. Okay, much more progress today, and I'm really proud of how this trick is coming along. Appearance-wise, I guess I'm proud of how it's coming along in general, but especially it looks good. I think I've used a lot of green as the color scheme, but beyond that, just the way that everything is kind of laid out, it's all pretty organized, and once I have a little bit more on this side, I think I'm going to have a track going back here to lead to these levers at the back, which we'll talk about, and that'll help balance out the left side. Yeah, I'm happy with how it looks. But the update today is I've started adding in the actual release for the wheel itself and the stop for the wheel itself, which are these two levers here. This is the release, and this one is the stop, and we'll take a look at how that works. And I've started to add in the levers that actually release the balls or make the balls go around. I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday, but I had worked out that I only actually need one of these levers to be machine maintenance. We've talked about what this means before, where it's kind of inserting or removing machine elements just so that things keep working. It's kind of like it breaks the immersion of a perfectly working machine, sort of. It's a little bit inelegant, in my opinion, to have stuff that has to get moved out of the way for the machine to work, or things to get, inserted back in at the right moment, just because, the clearance doesn't work out in a certain way. And I want to, in general, I like to avoid it as much as possible. And I figured out that it's possible to avoid it for 3 of the 4 levers. You need 2 on each rotation, one to start and one to start the balls to activate, and then one to, the last one needs to hit something to trigger the next step. And then there are 2 orientations of it. So you need 4 levers. 3 of them can be done without machine maintenance. The last one, it does need to be slid into place in the second orientation. So this is the first lever. It can already start on the board and just kind of flip out of the way. This one can also start on the board and then flip out of the way and stay out of the way. The third one can start out of the way and be pulled into place to hit this one, right? So this is out of the way when it's rotating initially, and it can be pulled to hit something on the board. But the last one is the one that needs to be inserted into place, because there's no way to have a ball hit, or there's no way to have a lever exist here without anything hitting it. It has to be inserted. Long story short. But yeah, so the way these levers work, this one's pretty self-explanatory. It just gets removed. It's a little pin, and that allows the gear to rotate. Or not gear, but it allows the wheel to rotate. And again, we talked about the weight system. So these weights pull the wheel, and yes, so there's this lever here, which is, I think I called it in my tutorial series, like a resetting pin or something like that. But basically, it's a lever that always wants to pull in this one direction. There's a rubber band on here, and so you'll see it when the wheel actually starts rotating, is that the dice here can pass by this lever when it's rotating clockwise, but it's timed up and it's positioned in such a very specific way so that the moment that it runs out of energy and comes to a stop is the exact moment that it passes by here. So theoretically, it should basically decelerate and then stay where it stops. That's the idea. And it might not work perfectly. Sometimes it doesn't quite get that far because obviously it's very precise. But if it does, it should work. So here is kind of the first part of it. So here's the first rotation. And then actually everything's all connected up until the actual wheel spinning. So we'll see if that works. You can see the lever gets out of the way. You can see the second lever gets out of the way. Wheel rotates. Lever. Okay, so it didn't make it. It didn't make it. But you can see how this lever works. And I did predict that, so it's not unprecedented. So that you can see that the dice can rotate past it when it rotates this direction, but not when it rotates the other direction, right? So that's the idea. So you can see that it decelerated, right? And it should be timed so that it like barely makes it past here, and then it stops right here to let the lever in, and then that's like exactly where it stops, so that there's no, coming back, because that would jostle the whole board and make the balls go early. But the balls did go early because it didn't quite make it. But that's okay. And then obviously this one activates and pushes them around the second time. And then this is the way that I'm inserting the second lever to go back out of the spinning board again, and probably to the transition out of the clip. But yeah, it's coming along. This is one of the easiest clips I've had to make. I don't want to jinx it, but I think I'm in the clear now. There shouldn't be any more difficulties. It's just a matter of sort of building it, making it look nice, making it look organized, making sure people are looking in the right place. I don't want to have a distracting connection off of the side here as you're supposed to be watching the balls rotate. So I'll have to figure that out. But yeah, those are just easy problems. So nice little clip. This one hasn't taken too long either. So it's I actually really like this one. Okay, it is day 4. And the clip is now complete, and I'm just about to start filming, which is why the table is now cleaned off. So, there have been some pretty major changes. The first most noticeable is the tracks have been added. So we have an in track here for the transition in, and we have an out track here for the transition out. We also have this track here, which serves as the connection between stage 1 and stage 2 of this trick. So, as the balls go around the first time, that causes this marble to go, that releases the latch, causing the wheel to go. But then that doesn't itself cause anything else. So there needs to be an external connection that leads to the next step, which is to react the circle of balls again. And that's what this track does. It's the connection between the stages of the trick. Now, one of the things I wanted to keep in mind with this is that as the wheel is turning, I don't want the viewer to be looking anywhere else. I want them to be looking at the spinning wheel. So I need to time this in such a way that there is a beat, right, between when the wheel comes to a stop and when the next thing happens. I don't want the wheel to stop and then immediately start reacting. I want you to be able to process, oh, the balls have reset before the balls actually start moving again. So that means this track has to be very slow, which it is. It's about as slow as I can possibly make it. And the other thing is the ball is white. It blends into the track, so it's a little bit less visually distracting, because it does actually start moving a little bit before the wheel comes to a complete stop. So as much as I can do to limit, your eye getting distracted to follow this ball, I'm gonna do as much as I can to prevent that. So the other thing that happened that I changed was the string here at the front. This vertical wood block here used to be around here-ish, and this lever used to be a 90-degree lever, but I had to change it because I was having issues at the front of the table with the strings getting all mixed together and crossed over and twisting around each other. A bit of a simple change, but it was definitely worth it. It works a lot better now. The strings don't get tangled. So another minor change there. Okay, yeah, the biggest thing is this. So in the last update, I had, I think, just this lever, but it was at the back of the table, if you remember. And then this is the one that has to slide. This is the one that needs to be machine maintenanced into place. And this wasn't actually on an actual support or anything. I think it was just kind of free floating. I hadn't finished making it yet. But that was originally back here. And the reason I moved it was because I realized that if I'm going to be filming this, I don't want to have the clip be taller than it is wide, because that just looks really weird. Now, I know this is not exactly something I've been paying attention to, especially in the last two clips, but I like to try to have the clips fill the frame as much as I can. So you'll notice as I'm holding the camera here, it's about where the clip is actually filmed from, and you'll notice it fits the frame, right? It's a little bit wider than it is tall. And that's good, because it makes it feels more balanced, right? But you can imagine if there was stuff at the back, and also keep in mind it would have to accommodate for some height, so you'd need to show some of the red curtain. You know, the camera would need to be way back here for you to really get the full clip into frame. Now, you'll notice the two tracks on the sides do go out of frame, so that would actually work, but it just doesn't look as good as being in more. It's not really a huge change, but you get the idea. You want the frame to be balanced, and you don't want to have to accommodate for just this like tiny little thing at the back when it can fit a whole lot better here on the right side. So that was a change I made just to make the trick look better on camera, and also things at the back are harder to see just because they're, you know, falling off the back and they're not facing camera. And that's also why the tracks have a bit of a curve to them, right? I put these, you know, squiggles, these S shapes in, just to make it fit the frame a little bit better. But yeah, I am just about to start testing, like I said. This weight has been a bit of a problem. It keeps changing, right? The amount of weight that is required keeps changing. So we talked yesterday about how I want to time it and have the weight be calibrated just so perfectly that the dice here passes by the yellow rod but doesn't overshoot. So as soon as it passes, the yellow rod is able to lock in and hold it in place. So that way there's no backspin. So it slows down, it decelerates, and then right as it gets to this point, the yellow rod is able to pass by, and that locks it in place. It doesn't spin backwards, because that's going to dislodge the balls. Now, I'll demonstrate that, and I'll try that again, but I don't have high hopes that it'll work, because like I said, the weight keeps changing, and it's inconsistent. But yeah, let's see if that works. So here we go. Okay, actually that did make it, but you'll see that even that tiny bit of backwards movement, it was only about this much, right? It was only about that much that it overshot, and it just had to come back a little bit like that. That was enough to dislodge the red ball. So in a case like that, that would be a fail, right? I mean, obviously. But like even that much of a tiny difference is enough to make it fail. So I need to either fix the weight or just wait it out until I get a take where it just perfectly slides into place and there's no jostling at all, which will happen. It has happened before. So that is the clip. I don't think it'll take that long to get this to work. I am really a huge fan of this clip, and it makes a pretty good thumbnail. I'm really thinking this might end up being the thumbnail. Obviously, once the balls are reset, but like somewhere around here, that'd be a really good shot. So yeah, I am a huge fan of this trick. All right, it is day one of the next Dominoes versus Machines clip, and this one is a series of zigzag tracks on top of flexograms of different sizes. And the concept here is because of the geometry of the flexograms, you can tell the one in the front is a nice long one that goes all the way to the ground, and the one in the back is a short one that goes on top of a elevated platform. And then the same thing over here, except the other way around. And you'll notice that the tracks on top form a zigzag pattern, but when you straighten them up, they straighten out, and they are now parallel to the front of the table, or parallel to the sides, perpendicular to the front of the table. Same on this one. So they both start facing camera like this, and then they're going to topple like dominoes. They're going to be at least one more, I think 2 more probably, and obviously something will roll across them in the initial position, and then they'll fall over just like that into the zigzag pattern. Then you have the ball that can roll down just like that. So this is a pretty basic clip. It's not basic necessarily to figure out all the dimensions and things like that, although still not the most difficult thing I've ever done. But it is basic in terms of the viewer experience and just understanding what's going on. So this one's probably gonna go at the front of the video, probably Machines 2, the second Machines clip. And this was an idea that I thought of actually because of something that happened when I was building the last, or not last, it was two clips before, the one with the double pendulum, with the gears and the planetary gears that also used some flexograms in that. And when I had to change the height of the whole system, I needed to change the lengths of these rods. And sort of in that process, well, not these rods, literally, but you know what I mean, like the rods, the length of the rods in the flexograms for that trick. And in that process, I somehow sort of came to the realization that with differing lengths on either side of a flexing parallelogram, flexogram, right? If you have like 2 of them on the front and the back, but they are different lengths, you can have them sort of line up in one position, in this case at the top, right? You can have them match here, but then when they fall over, the differing lengths will cause twisting. But, you know, because they're flexing parallelograms, the track will stay parallel to the table, because that's what the flexogram does. And so that kind of unlocked this idea that you could actually use that on purpose, right? Because obviously when I did it before, that was not what I had in mind. It's not what I was after. But I kept it in the back of my mind as an idea that maybe I could repurpose this motion, because I think it's a cool little geometry trick thing where you can sort of tell that because of the geometry of the flexograms, it causes that twist. And then using that on purpose is kind of a fun idea. And then as I was making this today, I realized that this is kind of similar to what I did with Joseph in Pass the Pepper, with that one clip with the accidents, right, where the tracks fall over and they form, you know, a zigzag, which is unfortunate actually, because the way that I was inspired to make this was a totally different way, like I just explained. But I think anyone who finds that similarity would just assume that, oh, I was inspired by that trick from Pass the Pepper to do this, which I guess is not a bad thing. But it is like, oh, well, that wasn't exactly why, but strangely, coincidentally, it does resemble that trick. But yeah, this one's coming along quite nicely. Like I said, I'm going to add at least one more module, probably 2, just to make 4 tracks. And you'll notice I have these elevated platforms, which are just flooring samples that are the same color, texture, pattern as the actual table surface, and that makes it really easy. See, I have one here as well. It makes it really easy to elevate the entire module by an exact height, and then just, you know, put these modules at different heights wherever I need them. So the first one's attached to the table, and then the second one I just elevated by a certain height so that it would, you know, be a little bit taller. And there we go. Now it's just repeat, repeat, repeat until I have 4 of them. And then I do have to figure out how I'm going to actually work with the tracks when they're in the initial position, because I don't necessarily think that 4 balls rolling across 4 straight tracks is that interesting. That is kind of something that I used to do a lot with track tricks. I used to do a lot of track tricks in general. But one thing I used to do a lot is with track tricks, they would start in some kind of initial position, and then just to prove that they could be used in that position, I'd like roll balls over all of them. And what this ended up resulting in sometimes, a lot more times than not, is the start of a clip would often just be a bunch of balls rolling over tracks that don't move, just to like prove that they can be used in that position. And then you'd actually get the motion of the trick where the tracks would rearrange in some way, and then you'd do it all over again. You'd roll it all over all the tracks again. And it just got a little bit formulaic, so I don't know if I want to do the same thing. I'm considering, honestly, just not even rolling a ball over the tracks in the initial position at all, and just having them start like this, and then topple like dominoes, and then rolling a ball on them. But I'm not totally sold on that. I think I'll find a way to roll the balls across these tracks, whether it's the same ball, I don't know, because that would just take a long time. And it would be distracting to have whatever track, because if it's the same ball, you'd need methods of carrying it from one track to another, and because of the elevation, you'd need to probably go from left to right. But anyway, you'd need some way of like another track here to carry it from one to the other, and then that track would still be there when they topple, so it would block the view. So I think if I do anything, it'll just be 4 different balls that roll over them all at the same time somehow. Again, this is something I have to figure out once I have the whole system working, but it's coming along nicely. So let's see what happens tomorrow. All right, it is day 2 of the collapsing zigzag trick. And the update is that I've decided to lean into the Joseph Herscher style even more than I was planning on originally, and actually making it look kind of like an accident. Now, the effect doesn't work quite as well with my style than it does with Joseph's style, because obviously everything here looks very intentional. There's no like everyday objects that would make it. I don't know why that helps the illusion, but it does. But it is kind of an homage. You'll at least be able to sort of go. I think the reaction that I'm aiming for is something along the lines of like, oh, okay, gotcha. That's what was supposed to happen. Right. So I'm misleading the viewer and then revealing that it was actually all intentional the entire time. So here's the basic setup. The tracks are in their upright position at the moment. And then these balls are going to roll across the tracks in this position. So these 3 on the right here, and they're going to fall into the tube. And I'll probably add some, direction, like funneling system so that it doesn't miss. And then the orange one goes across this track, but instead of going across and then landing in the tube, the track itself, while the ball is on it, collapses this way, and that topples the entire thing and collapses into the zigzag. And of course, since the ball is still on the track, it just goes down the zigzag. So I won't demonstrate the 3 balls rolling over these tracks because there's always a chance that they'll tip by themselves. These are very precariously positioned, so I don't want to have to reset that if I don't have to. And just for this demo, I won't do that. And hopefully, when I roll this ball across, it'll actually tip the right way. Sometimes it doesn't tip the right way. And then also, sometimes even if it does tip, the ball jumps out. But hopefully, you'll be able to see this is kind of what I'm going for, if this works. Well, you could at least tell what the tracks are going to do. But the ball jumped out. But yeah, this is the basic idea. So, what is next to do? It's going to be figuring out how the rest of the balls really work. I know they're going to go into the tube. And again, I picked the tube because it's like a long track. Instead of having track segments on the front here, that would just block the view. I wanted to have the balls actually fall down because then otherwise it's blocking the view. So this is something that's out of the way of the view of the zigzag stuff. And it's just one object. I didn't want to have like 3 different cups or I guess 4 because they would have to blend in. The 4th one would have to look like it's just like the other 3. So I decided to do one track, and this is a long track that extends far enough to reach the 4th one here, even though the ball from that track doesn't actually land in it. So the question really is figuring out how... I guess actually the first thing I need to figure out is what clip in the video this is actually going to be, because that affects what the transition out of the clip is going to be, and even it affects the direction of the in transition. Because you'll remember the first thing that happens is the ball rolls across this track, which is kind of annoying to do if the transition has to start from the left side of the screen. It'd be much easier if the transition came in from the right, and then, it's right here. But I might not be able to do that, depending on what trick in the video this actually is. But then, as I've been trying to start saying for a couple times now, it's figuring out what the balls are going to do, because these balls don't really do anything yet. It's just the orange one that rolls down the zigzag, and then, it could just exit the frame, but then these balls would be useless. So these need to do something, and if the orange ball might not actually be able to exit the frame, because I don't know what trick is in the video, and if I need to match a transition, this doesn't match a transition. I think it might be the steel ball rolling on one of these tracks, one of these type of tracks. It might be the steel ball. So I'd have to figure out a way to make maybe the orange ball release the 3 balls, and then the 3 balls need to release the steel ball somehow. I don't know. It's a bit of a conundrum. But yeah, that's just some connection stuff, I guess. I don't know. It might not be that hard to figure out, but it is probably going to be something I'm going to scratch my head about for quite a long time before deciding on something. And then when you see it in the final video, it'll just look very simple, very elegant, like it was designed that way the whole time, when in reality it took a lot of thinking and a lot of consideration to decide on what would actually look the simplest and the most effortless in the end. The other thing I wanted to say, I hinted to it a little bit, where I didn't actually test these 3 because the tracks might fall. I have a feeling this trick's going to be pretty miserable to test. It's just going to be a lot of tests, I think. The resets will be pretty quick, I bet, but I feel like just every test is going to be ball rolls across, and then the track tips early. Ball rolls across, track tips early. Ball rolls across and makes it. Then the second one, ball causes it to tip early. So it's just going to be, and just like you saw, the track did topple the right way, but then the ball jumped out, and sometimes it falls the other way, and then, yeah. So it's just going to be until I just trial until I get the perfect storm of exact results I want. But I think, it's just figuring out what this stuff in the front's going to be. That's the big update. It is day 2 of working on this clip, and it's actually complete. So it came together really quickly, but there have been some major updates. So we left off where it was the meat of the trick completed and in working condition, and I had kind of just sketched out some generic idea with this sort of, with the clear tube in front. And that was it. And you'll notice what I've added is all of this here. There's this track leading in, and then the big thing is all of this down here. So, this is just a timing system. It's in the back, it's not conspicuous, it's not meant to be. But we'll get to that. So, you may have noticed in the last update that this track was the other way around. It wasn't the other way around, but it was tilted the other direction. It was tilted from left to right, sloping downwards this way. And so the way this is meant to look is it's meant to look like an accident. I don't know how believable that'll really be, but it's meant to sort of be an homage to Joseph Herscher and the idea of making a trick look accidental. So that meant that, and to go along with that, you need 2 things. You need to have a moment of the surprise, but you also need to make it clear at some point after that everything was intentional after all. It can't just be confusing, like, oh, I thought this was going to happen, but then something else happened. Okay, that's weird. You have to then make it clear that, oh, I was duped on purpose, right? The audience has to realize that they were misled intentionally, not unintentionally. And that's crucial. But the other thing you need is all of the misleading elements have to still be important, even if not for the reason you think. So with these 3 balls that were coming down these 3 tracks, they don't actually serve any real purpose for demonstrating the actual trick. It's all about this last one, the orange ball that rolls down here, but then instead of rolling off the edge and then hitting, the X marks the spot and then getting into the tube, the tracks all collapse and then it rolls down the zigzag and then goes through the pipe. That's the main trick. That doesn't need 3 other balls. But those 3 balls still have to be important, because that's going to be crucial in making the audience realize that it was intentional all along. If the 3 balls just did their thing, rolling across the tracks, bouncing on the X's, and then going into the tube, and then just never being involved in the trick ever again, it would just look unintentional. It would just be confusing as to why even do all of that if it's not important for the trick to work. So the crucial thing is these balls still need to be important for the trick to work, but you gotta make it look, but you can't make it obvious that they are important. So it's a tough thing to try to balance, and it's a really tough balancing act to figure out and to make it look very simple. But I think I did it, and it required required restructuring the entire clip so that things went from right to left at the front, but still right to left here, which I just hadn't gotten to thinking about last time. So it's the classic ball fills hole trick where I got to get these out to show you. Put them in there, I guess. Where the balls go into a hole, and then the next one rolls over that ball that's there, and then rolls into the next hole. All right, what am I demonstrating? So, the idea that the thing that you're gonna believe is going to happen is that all 4 balls are gonna roll across their tracks and then go into the tube, roll down, and you can see that it's filling in the holes, right? So you'll see the first one go into here, second one goes into here, third one goes into here, and then you expect the 4th ball to roll across the track, straight across, hit the X, go into the tube, then go down the 3 tracks, or the 3 balls, turn the corner, and then hit the line going out. It's a bad trick because it's boring. It's just 4 tracks and 4 balls. But, unless you're inside the community and my videos, you wouldn't necessarily expect that there's going to be more. So I want to make it interesting and surprising to someone who has maybe never even seen a machine video before. And so when things collapse, the ball still does end up going over those 3 balls and then turning the corner, just like you thought it would, except these all collapse and then it goes on this track and heads down this way. So the only element that is kind of out of place, well, there are actually a couple, but the only elements that don't make sense if what the audience expects actually does happen is this track here. If what the audience thinks is going to happen actually does happen, this wouldn't need to exist. These supports wouldn't need to exist, right? But those are the only things, right? Those are the only things that could potentially give away that there's more here than what you think. And trying to keep that to a minimum was actually pretty difficult. And that's why I had to reverse the direction, right? Because otherwise I would need to have, much more infrastructure over here to use the 3 balls and to make the orange one interface with those 3 balls and make those 3 balls necessary. And just making it go back down the entire system is just a really elegant solution. So it did take a lot of time to figure out, but now that it is figured out, it's clear to me that it was the best possible solution. And then this is just in the back. These are the timing systems. I had to use the battery-operated train, which I have not used in a very long time, because there's nothing else that would give me the proper timing. So that was another thing I had to figure out, is I want there to be a beat in between each of the balls going down. So I don't want them to be released in quick succession. Like, I want the next one to be released at around the time that each ball gets into the pipe, or even later if possible. Because I don't want, you're never going to notice them filling the cups if the next ball is already being released. You're going to just be drawn to the new thing that's happening. So I still think the timing isn't perfect, but I can't make it any slower than it is. The trick would just drag for far too long, and I can't really make a timing delay that's any longer than this train already is. It's pretty slow. So I've settled for this. It's fine. But the timing is around when the ball enters the pipe that the next one gets released. So the train is about the only thing I could do that was actually slow enough. And yet it just hits dominoes that topple over and pull strings as it goes along. And then this doesn't lead to anything. It just dead ends. The train stops right at the end. So that's just a timing system to make the balls come in at the right times. But yeah, like I said in one of the other previous updates, I think this might be a bit of a challenge to get this one to work. I've tried my best to make these tracks sort of stable in their upright parallel positions, but they will probably still fall over early, and this last one especially, I'm anticipating plenty of times where it falls the other way or jumps out early. But I don't know. I think I'll be okay with it. It's not going to be the most dreadful experience to get this thing to work, because once I get it to work, everything else is very reliable. The train's very reliable. The balls filling the cups is very reliable. Yeah, I mean that's basically all that there is in the trick. But yeah, I'll just demonstrate the ball rolling over, the balls filling the cups. First one fills the first cup. Second one rolls over it and fills the second cup. Third one rolls over the two and fills the third. And then finally, orange ball rolls down the whole thing, down the tube, across all three, and then hits the dominoes that will exit the frame. So there you go. That is the collapsing zigzags trick. All right, it is day one of working on the next clip, and this is the intro clip, my first clip in the video, the first clip in the video. Now, it's day one, like I said, but I'm probably going to end up doing 2 day one updates because I do want to go over all of the pre-planning and not even really pre-building, but pre-planning and pre-thinking that I had to do for this clip. So the idea, as you know by now, is this is an anagram decoder. I've been obsessed with anagrams for a long time, and it's only fitting that I finally make a machine concept built around it. And it's perfect for dominoes versus machines because the first clip in the video, whenever I make the first clip in the video, it's always a special thing. And then whenever I make the last clip in the video, it's always a special thing. It just alternates back and forth every year. And it's my turn to make the intro clip this year. And in previous years, I've done like the marble maze thing. I've done a sign that pops out of frame. I've done a gyroscope. And then most recently, I did the Pythagoras Ricci recreation. And that was kind of taking it to the next level of like an extra special intro clip. And now, I don't know if it'll be as special as that because it won't be a different style of building, but it's still like it's like a video, it's like a machine trick that's much more conceptual than it is just a cool trick. It's always a little bit extra special. So anyway, enough with the preamble. Let's talk about what I want to do. I've worked out that, and this was just kind of lucky, that the phrase dominoes versus machines, which these are the letters for right here, anagrams to videos on mechanisms, which is pretty cool, but also a little bit inelegant. It bothers me a little because mechanism just comes from the word machine, so it's not exactly like the word is really changing, but the videos on mechanisms is too apt. It's too perfect to not use that. But that just came from using an anagram generator and then spending a bit of time on it. So the idea is to have these like refrigerator magnet letters go through, they'll be on a board, which is what this is, and they'll go through an anagram decoder, which is what this board is, and we'll talk about this in a sec. And then it'll go through and then come out the other side and it'll say dominoes versus machines. I considered doing this as an edit, as like an editing trick where it'll just be, it'll say videos on mechanisms, go through the translator, and then come out the other side saying dominoes versus machines. But I think that could be a viable way to do it if the translator was simply like a bar like this, right? And it would just like wipe as it goes underneath. That could be a fun way to do it. But then I thought about it more, and I thought it's cooler, I think, to do it for real. And then that means you need basically to hide the entire board underneath something to actually execute the transition to like replace the letters. And I took a long time to think about the method I wanted to use to actually change out the letters. And I even had, it was even a consideration for a while that I would just replace the whole board. And there would be a board switch. So basically, I need to figure out a way to, in a very compact space and in a very quick amount of time, wipe all the letters off the board and then place the new ones on top in their actual arrangement. And I have a way of doing this, but let's talk about some other more interesting things, or other interesting things first. So this is a piece of flooring. It is the same kind of flooring as the table surface itself, although it's a different texture, but it's the same like brand and stuff. And this was just left over in the basement of the new place I'm living in now. The previous owners just left a bunch of the extra tile, or not tile, but flooring that is used in the upstairs bathroom. And, you know, of course I'm going to scavenge that and use it for machines. And then this board is the perfect size to completely disguise or completely cover the board with the letters on it. And this is the front cover of my desk drawer, which is completely dark at the moment. Let's see if I can... Oh, I can't change any of my settings. But yeah, it's the front cover of the drawer here. And then we'll get to this in a sec. So that is the idea. How do I want to actually execute the transition? And it took a while to think about it. I considered, like I said, replacing the entire board, having duplicate boards, and then just having one like lay on top. But I figured you'd probably notice that. You'd probably be able to tell. I want it to be as mysterious as possible. Like, oh my God, how did that even happen? So I thought about like trap doors with the letters dropping down, or like a platform that would like swipe away the letters or like vacuum them up. I got a little bit crazy thinking about how this was going to work. But what I came up with involves, I don't know, maybe these rods. I'm not completely sure. But basically, I just want to drop it like you would with your hand. Like I want to pinch it on both sides and then just drop it. It won't be that high because it doesn't have to be, right? Because the actual thing that moves away when you drop it just moves to the side as opposed to like swinging under like a trap door or something. So you can have it drop from like a millimeter off the actual surface, right? If it slides underneath, imagine the platform is moving instead of my hand, right? Imagine it's, you know, sliding underneath and then you can just drop it and it'll land basically exactly where you want it. So that's the idea. It'll take some thinking about how I'm going to make that take up very little vertical space, but it should be possible. And I'm thinking like if I need padding, if the letters aren't exactly the same height, to make it like to sort of like squish one side in, you know, into the padding. I don't know. We'll think about it. But then I thought of something even cooler. If I'm making an anagram translator for the title, Dominoes versus Machines, I should have something else go through that anagram translator that is like an actual object, and then have it come out the other side as an anagram of that object. And long story short, here is what I came up with. Heart and earth. These are surprisingly difficult to find. Pairs of words that are like small objects that are nouns that are anagrams of each other is crazy hard to find. The only other pair that I thought could be even kind of reasonable, well, a couple actually, is stone and notes. And I was going to use like a small rock and then have a pad of sticky notes come out the other side. And there's also grape and pager. I mean, grape is self-explanatory, but I don't, like a pager, I didn't think would be, first of all, I don't have any, but I have stuff that kind of looks like a pager. And but I didn't think that you'd even be able to like necessarily point that out and be like, a pager, I get it, grape to, like, this is very obvious. This is obviously a heart, and this is obviously earth. So this is a very easy thing to understand visually, like, aha, I get it, the heart transforms into the earth. Perfect. And I'm thinking I'll also have kind of as decoration around the machine other anagram pairs, including the ones I mentioned. And those would just be sort of extra Easter eggs for people to figure out if they wanted to, like a plate and a petal, like a rose petal, or a stapler and a bucket of plaster or something. I don't know. These are other options that I have. So that is what I want to do, and I'll have another update once I've actually built some stuff. But I did want to mention, all of the thought that is going into this before, all the work that I've actually already done on this clip before I've even built anything really. So yeah, updates coming soon. Okay, it's been a long day one, but there's some good progress. I think I've figured out my method for dropping the letters. And it is the same version that I thought I would, it's exactly how I thought I would get it to work, but the materials I used I still had to figure out, and then as I was building it I had to change a bunch of things along the way. So, like I said, the method was kind of like pinching it from the top and bottom, like each letter is pinched from the top and bottom, and then one of the sides is removed so that they just drop straight down. So here's how it works. You can see this is all mounted onto a glass pane, or it's not glass, but it's see-through. And then this is to approximate the top of the board, basically. And I also realized that I do want to, not in the video itself, but maybe in like an extras video or some kind of Twitter or Patreon thing, I want to show the behind the scenes of how the machine actually works. So I can't mount all of this machinery stuff to the bottom of the board because there would be no way to show that. So what I did is put it onto a see-through piece of plastic, and then I'll just cover that up with the board. But this glass, or the see-through sheet, is the same size as the board. Anyway, so this blue foam here, that is allowing the small variations in height of each of the letters so that they can still be pinched properly, because there really would be no way to like make every letter the same. Like the letters are slightly different heights. Like the E, for example, is actually short, and I think the M is really tall. So it's a difference of millimeters, or probably less than a millimeter, but it's enough that if you tried to make the distance between this all the same, you'd have some letters that don't fit and some letters that fall straight through. So you need the foam to adjust basically by itself to the height of the letter. So these levers here that I'm pulling on with the string, these, there are rubber bands here, and these are pulling these two middle boards, these little wooden strips. The rubber bands want to make them come together, right? They want to come closer to each other in the center, and that will drop both of the letters on each side. I still have to make the ones on this side. And this lever removes the barrier in between the two boards, or the two wooden strips, and that will cause them to snap together and drop all the letters. So hopefully, and we'll see how well they actually drop, but here is the drop of just the bottom part. Ready? Okay, well that doesn't really count because I just yanked the whole thing with me. But you can see it did drop them, but it's not a very accurate drop because I just yanked the whole thing. So maybe I'll try to demonstrate that tomorrow once I have everything a bit more secure. But you can at least get the idea of how it works. So yeah, hopefully that's not going to be too much of a problem. I actually still have to figure out how I'm doing the removal of the first couple, or the first arrangement of letters, which I thought would be the easiest part. But actually it might be pretty difficult because they do have to go somewhere. And, whatever is sweeping them away has to be, self-contained underneath the board here. So, that actually might not be easy at all. So, wish me luck. All right, it is day 2 of the Anagram Decoder, and I have installed the mechanism that will sweep away the original letters, which are jumbled up at the moment because they don't have to be perfect for me to test all of this. They just have to be in the right shape. And it's this black bar right here, and it travels from front to back, and it pushes all the letters into the white bin. So that's that. I have removed this part, which will go on top, and this actually is what the letters get pinned against, so I don't have that part reset. That's not really what I'm testing right now, but this part just goes right back on top, fits right in, and in order to actually reset this part, I have to disconnect everything at these connect joints here. So where it meets the base, basically. So I've also connected up the actual transition or connection from, first of all, from pushing in the platform to releasing the sweeper, which is this lever here. It presses on this compound lever, or paired lever, which translates that motion across this into here, and that's what releases it. And then I've also connected up from the sweeper to the letter dropper, which again is controlled by these two yellow levers. And that is done through this pusher here. This straw pushes through into the domino, domino falls, and then that's what pulls on these yellow rods. So I think I'm ready to kind of show that. So the only thing, the parts that are reset right now are those two connections I just mentioned. So what should happen, hopefully, is the platform gets pushed in, the sweeper goes, all the letters go into the white basket, and then right after that, these levers get pulled and these wooden bars close together. And that's what would drop the letters if they were reset, but they're not. So hopefully this leads all the way up until these wooden things closing. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, basically. There was a bit of a pause there because I didn't push the platform in far enough, but that won't be something controlled by me in the actual machine. There will be, an actual stopper that it presses against so that it doesn't make that mistake. But yeah, that's perfect. It's really fun to see all the letters just kind of get swiped away. So yeah, it's coming along. I still have a lot. It's one of those tricks where every time you make a big step, you feel like you're almost done, but then you realize that there's actually a lot more that still needs to be done. And the big thing I'm talking about here really is the whole mechanism for actually pulling the platform along and then having a gate that stops it and then a gate that releases it. Because if it wasn't clear, this motion or this whole system where it swipes the letters away and then drops the new ones, it happens while the board is at rest. It doesn't do this as the board is moving, and there is no added timing element of it. I considered doing that. In a perfect world, that's how it would be done. Is it wouldn't stop at all. It would just do all of this as the board is moving. But that I quickly realized that would be just an insane level of difficulty that isn't really necessary. Like, it's just a magical box. Like, I don't know. I guess it would be more magic if it didn't even have to stop at all. But whatever, it's fine. I'm truly at peace with that. It doesn't actually bother me like a lot of things. I'm a perfectionist about a lot of things, but that does not bother me. And similarly with the heart and earth thing at the front, I'm going to try to make it as close to, a perfect transformation where it looks like it's just the same speed as it goes through. But if it has a little bit of a pause and then something else comes out, that's fine. That's fine. So yeah, the other thing is that all of the mechanisms, like this pusher thing and then the falling domino, I would love for those to be hidden from the actual camera angle that you're viewing it at, because keep in mind there's going to be a board here, and if you view it from right about this angle, you can tell that with the board coming across these two, that actually blocks the domino in its downward position, but not in the upright position. So I might have to actually elevate that a little bit more, like the board at the back end at least, just to cover that domino as it's standing up. That was something I didn't realize. But yeah, that's about it. I think tomorrow is going to be probably making the mechanism for moving this along. I'm considering using the tape measure and just using my classic sliding drawer mechanism with a tape measure, because as I was testing this, it seems to be pulling at just about the right speed, but it might not be powerful enough, because there is a little bit of friction as it goes underneath here and, has to rub against some various things, just because tolerances. But we shall see. Obviously the other solution is just weight, off-table weight. Very easy to do. But yeah, that's not all. It's also the gates that have to come in, stop the thing, and then release the thing, and yeah, and then making the heart earth thing. But that's probably a day 4 thing. Anyway, all right, it is the end of day 3, and I have installed the method that will be used to pull the platform along. It is actually the measuring tape after all. It did end up working, and I actually have it completely reset. So I'm ready to do a test of the entire letter switch out trick. You can see I've installed the letters, Dominoes versus Machines, in there. This isn't reset the way it would normally be. It's just scrambled letters, but that doesn't matter as much. It's just, they just get swept away. Whereas these, if they're in a different order, they don't work as well, just because I've made the dimensions specific to the letters. So that's why these are written out correctly and these are just random. The only thing missing, obviously, is the board that goes on top to cover all of it, because obviously I want to show how it works here. Yeah, and then this is the method for stopping it underneath the board. I think I pointed out this yesterday. This is the method for releasing the sweeper. It's a paired lever. I pointed that out. This has a shock absorber on it. And then as this domino, which is again to release the yellow levers that closes the wooden pieces and drops the letters, that also pushes off a weight, and that's what pulls on this, and this just folds down that way to release it again. And then obviously the tape measure is constantly pulling it to the right side. So my hopes for what is going to happen here right now, I hope everything works perfectly. I'm just moving stuff out of the way. I hope everything works perfectly, but I don't expect it to. I expect some absolutely disastrous failure. So anything better than that will be good to see. But I also put some tiny little, you can't see them, tiny speed bumps on the ground here that the wheels get caught behind, so it stays in this position here. But it just takes a small push and it goes. All right, let's see how this goes. Okay, so it just didn't have enough energy somehow, or somehow the sweeper got a bit stuck. So these letters are not, they didn't go down all the way. The sweeper did not go all the way. I don't know why. I think I can make that a little heavier and maybe that'll work better. All right, but here's the drop part, which didn't work at all. Oh, it did kind of work. This is what I was afraid of. Yeah. Well, this is an unfixable problem that I'm learning about literally as I film this right now. So this is, that's unfixable. I guess I'll just probably end up having to run it over and over again until I get something that's at least mostly legible. But yeah, that's inexcusable. Okay, well, that's good to know at least. Okay, got a lot of work ahead of me today. We'll see. I gotta install the heart thing that rolls down on the rails and then transforms into the earth. This is the board that goes on top of everything, sort of like this, and then it just covers up everything nicely. And then obviously this will be decorated with the letters that say Anagram Decoder, and maybe something else on it too. It's probably going to look quite empty without anything out, with just that. But yeah, then the heart comes in on the right side, transforms into earth, rolling out on that side. Okay, well, yeah, like I said, a lot of work ahead of me. Okay, the clip is done, kinda. I still have some cleanup to do and some decoration, and of course resetting. So it has not worked yet. I haven't started testing yet, but I'm filming this just as I put on the very last connection, which was this string here. So, what has happened since the last update? Well, all of the decoration on the board itself is all new. The gears are, I guess, pointless, except they're purely cosmetic. They don't actually do anything, but they are there to sort of, again, this is a special clip. This is the very first clip in the video. It's a little bit of a weird one. It's unlike the others. And so a bit of an extra touch like this is kind of fun. And it's powered by a motor, which is actually this motor here, which actually goes to my turntable. But I took out the motor and the battery, and all of that is underneath here, which you can't see at all. But if I switch this on, whoops, I don't know, they're really slow. They should be, there we kind of go. I don't know, I'll have to figure out why this isn't working. But yeah, I have a motor for the gears, and then I put these floor tile sample things with the letters on them here. Then this track is what connects this side to this side again, so that the heart can roll through and transform into Earth. Actually, that's all. This is all new as well. I'm pretty sure. So this is the lever that releases the heart, and the heart is currently underneath here. So heart rolls down the rails, and then it comes out the other side as Earth. Very cool. Okay, so that is, I think, everything that is new since the last update, aside from just some transitions. Like I said, this is the transition that gets from pulling out the letters to releasing the heart. Yeah, the last update I was disappointed by how scattered and haphazard the letters are, and that problem has not really been totally fixed. You can still see the remnants from a previous test. But I think I've fixed it a little bit. I realized that actually the reason they were coming out all crooked and bad is actually because they were dropping fine, but then stuff was hitting on the way out. They were hitting against stuff, and stuff was sliding against them and making them rotate. So I ended up figuring out how to fix that, which ended up just being pretty simple. And so they should be able to come out the exact way that they drop now, but they still sometimes drop badly. And I think it's just going to be a matter of testing until I get a decent drop where things are mostly readable. Like this would be unacceptable. I wouldn't take this. But, if it was, maybe this, right? I'd be like, sure, that's fine. But yeah, the reason I originally thought maybe I would do the heart to earth transition going from right to left, because obviously when this slides out, I'm already on the right side of the screen. So a simple transition from here to here would be nice. But I realized that I kind of wanted people to have a moment to digest what just happened with the letters transforming before immediately throwing another thing at them. And you want to have the slow ball rolling across here as kind of that moment to go, oh, I see. Okay. The thing that was over here transformed into the letters that you see here. And then once that happens, they're ready to see the heart. And then also that gives them a chance to sort of look over here and see the heart and understand heart. And then you see the earth. So hopefully this clip lands. Yes, so I've still got these decoration elements. I guess I can give away what it's going to be. So you can see here, this is going to be hopefully visible in the clip itself. Find 3 other anagram pairs in this clip. So in addition to earth and heart, we have these items. One of them is not out right yet. But stone and notes are anagrams. Plates, right? Plates and petals, like from a flower. And then pagers. Neither of these are actually pagers, but like if I don't tell you that, you don't know. And they're still in the fridge right now, but grapes. So those are going to be hidden, not hidden really, but decorated throughout the clip on stands behind the platform. So like behind here and then behind here, these items are going to be sort of on display. And they'll be just an extra bonus thing to the viewer to sort of figure out the anagrams that are in the frame, aside from the obvious Earth Heart one. So yeah, hopefully this clip will be quick to test. I mean, this is going to be truly, this trick takes like 20 minutes to reset. That is no exaggeration. It's really bad. It's just because everything, you have to offload the entire board. Like the entire board has to come off, and then you have to manually, one by one, put in all the little letters, and then you have to reset all of it. You have to put it all back in. You have to take it out and disconnect them here, right? You have to disconnect there, or move the board, and then it's just a whole thing. So hopefully I can get the letters to come out in a readable way in like under 10 tests. That'd be great, but I don't know if I should hope for that or not. It is day one of the next Dominoes vs. Machines clip, and for this one, we are returning to an old classic. And by old classic, I mean a trick I built just about exactly a year ago for the last Dominoes vs. Machines, and that is the flipping gear things, where they would be like swinging, and then I forget what I actually called it. I think I called it swinging gear assembly. But it was basically these modules that like flipped through the air, and then through the power of magnets, they joined up, and they just sort of swung along like they were swinging on a vine. Now, last year, I had two different ideas for how I wanted this trick to be, and I ended up going with one of the two, which was to have two of the same module, like two of the same motion on both sides, so that they would do two swings and then join up in the middle. The other idea I had was to just do one of them, but have it do more than two swings. So have it just be like 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would have been cool as well. And ever since I made it, I sort of wanted to... I was curious about what it would look like if I had done it a different way. So this year, I am revisiting it. And I'm not doing it with gears. I'm doing it with just simple track segments. But I am revisiting this exact idea. Now, you might be wondering why it looks so different. And there are a couple of things that I wanted to change that I think I can improve on with the design. The first being, I realized that I don't actually need to support the track segments, the modules. They don't need to be supported from the bottom. And that's actually a key insight, because the problem with that is that, you know, you have these rods on either side, right? The blue rod in this instance. And these have to be long enough to support the track, or to support the module on either side. But then when it joins up with the next one, it has to pass underneath as it swings around, which, you know, in the version I made last year, it meant that this blue rod had to be longer, right? And that was fine, because I was only doing two swings. But now if I'm doing more, that rod length is going to have to keep getting larger and larger and larger to accommodate the swinging underneath. But not so if everything is supported from the top. And that's why I've done it like this. Now, I might be digging myself into a hole here, because this might not really work out. But I think it's possible to just have a sloped board and then use, you know, these nice stiff metal rods to make sure everything's very secure. The only thing, things are not very secure at the moment, because nothing's actually taped to the table and things are not secured. But everything, at least to the board here, it is secured. So I guess the point here is that I have redesigned the actual supports for the swinging motion. But the general principle behind everything is mostly the same. So let's see. I've so far only built 2 modules, right? 1 and 2, but that means 1 swing. So there's still quite a lot of work left to do. I'm trying to do this with one hand. A perpetual issue with these updates. That should be good enough. So I will try to demonstrate. There we go. I'm just going to let it crash onto the table. But what you should see is this one flip and go upside down, attach to the magnets here, and then this one will flip again, and you'll sort of see there's a moment where it's like here, face up, and then that's when it would, once it's built, connect to the third one. But right now it's just going to crash onto the table. So here we go. There you go. Pretty consistent so far, but the first one is the easy one. After that, I have a feeling that inaccuracies and just differences in the tolerances are going to start magnifying as things go, and it'll be more difficult for things to remain perfect as it goes. So, yeah, I think it's going okay so far, but I'm waiting for the wheels to fall off, basically. There's just a lot that can go wrong with this, and the fact that nothing has yet is a little bit worrisome. Because I am doing things very differently than I was last year. Yeah, I guess we'll just sort of see how things turn out tomorrow. All right, it is day 2 of this Dominoes versus Machines clip, and there is some bad news. The worst news possible, really, which is that this clip is going to have to be completely scrapped. Now, I'm not in a terribly bad mood because I've just figured out a possible way to only have to do 8 clips this year. We figured out a way to cut one of mine out and possibly even one of the Dominoes clips as well. So that makes it it eases the pain a little bit of having to lose all the time that I've spent on this. But let's talk a little bit about why and my philosophy surrounding completely scrapping a clip. So let's talk about the problems. So the first problem, let me just point it out, right? So the first swinging module works perfectly fine. We saw yesterday that it was able to swing and join up with the second module perfectly fine. The problem begins, let's see, where do these connect? Here we go. The problem begins when it joins up with the third module. So you'll notice that the swing arms, the 2 blue extension arms off of the sides here, are on both the right and the left side. They're on the far extremes of this swinging block. Now, when you have the third block in here, it's face up inside the holder, and it's supported over here, right? Now, the way these extension arms, the releases work, is that there's a sloped piece here that gets forced out that pushes out the support, and that helps, and that's just able to hold the piece in this position. I mean, this should all be pretty self-explanatory, but it holds the piece in this position until the next thing comes in, pushes this out, and that allows it to swing. Now, that works great. That works great for the first 2, just the way the geometry works. But when you have the third one, the extension arm, the blue arm, is right on top of that arm that has to swing out. So when it joins up, you have this issue. If my camera will focus, you can see that the arm from the previous block just collides with the arm that has to swing out. Now, if it swings out far enough, technically this isn't a problem. Like if it manages to really push it out, then it won't. But that is not possible, as I've learned. And even if it was, it'd be extremely unlikely. So that's kind of the root problem. And in order to address that, I've considered if it would be possible to go back to the original design, which had arms on either side that progressively got larger and larger. Because again, if you remember from yesterday, the discovery I kind of made that inspired a complete redesign of the format of this trick was that if I supported them from the top as opposed to from the bottom, I wouldn't have to worry about clearance underneath. But if these arms were any longer, again, blue is the shortest it can be, and the next one maybe would be about this long, that only makes the problem worse. Because again, it would have to travel, the extension arm would have to travel, or the support arm would have to travel even further to clear out of the way. So that isn't even really on the table either, going back to the original design. So let's go over the reasons I'm scrapping it. The first is that there are so many variables that are constantly up in the air that I can't really commit to until, every other variable is also committed to. And so it's this constant juggling act of changing one thing and having ripple effects throughout all the rest of it. We talked yesterday about how I still don't have any of this secured down. The height over here, I deliberately kept open. I had kept open the possibility of adding yet another box on top of here and changing the height. I also haven't affixed anything down to the table, so things can change in this direction, on that axis as well. Of course, there's also the possibility of changing the angle of these, right? That's a thing I've intentionally made possible to change. I've also obviously made it possible to adjust the spacing of these modules, so these can slide back and forth like that. I've also been changing how many magnets are on these. I had to double all the magnets because they just weren't strong enough. But of course that changes the weight, so that's also a variable. And that's just all of these things that I can't really commit to. And it's one of those scenarios where I thought that if I set up the board in a very specific way, with this specific height and this specific height, that would still leave open enough variables for me to make the trick work. Because I could still adjust the spacing of these, I could still adjust the height by adjusting the spacing, right? Further up is obviously higher. And I could adjust the rotation. I kept these all these variables open. And then I realized that even that wasn't enough variables, and that I would still have to change the height of this entire elevation here, and possibly even this elevation here. But this elevation can only go up, it can't go down, because, this thing is exactly this high. I can't go any lower, or else when it swings, it would just collide with the table. But all that said, those are all things I've been through before. I've built tricks with a billion variables that constantly have to be tweaked, and ripple effects that go throughout the entire thing, and starting over from scratch with committing to variables. That's no different territory than I've been through with 100 other tricks. I would push through it if that were the only thing, but that is not the only thing. The second reason is basically what we've been through, which is this issue with the collision on these extension arms. And that is a problem that is so integral to the design of this trick that it would require essentially a complete rebuild. I would have to start from square one. This would have to be scrapped entirely, and then I'd have to start over. And that's really not worth it unless I have another fix for that problem. So I'd have to not only spend the time to rebuild it, I'd also have to spend the time to think about how I'm going to rebuild it. And at the moment, I have no ideas. I don't think it's possible with this method, which worked so fantastically for last year's version of this trick and for the first two swings of this version. So, yeah, I don't think it's possible using that method. And now, the third reason is whenever I run into a problem like this, where I basically have to face complete scrapping of the trick, my default move is usually to salvage what I do have and convert it into a trick that is still cool. And so that would be using the first two swings. And yeah, that's a cool motion, but I've done that before. That is the part that already has existed for a year now. If that trick didn't exist, then absolutely, you could absolutely count on me just scrapping the third and fourth swings, making something with the two that looks cool, maybe duplicating it, maybe having them meet in midair, and then, oh, that's exactly the trick I've already made. So I can't really salvage what I have because the part I do have is just a worse version of what I've already made once. So yeah, that's not really on the table either. So that's why I'm deciding to completely scrap this for now. I guess a fourth reason would be that I can picture what this trick looks like with the 4 swings in my head, and it looks totally sick. I would love to see this exist. It's just, it can't exist right now. It won't exist in this form, but I would love to see it exist at some point. So I want to keep that possibility open. I will continue thinking about how I can make this work, but it won't exist this year. And unless I just get a sudden strike of inspiration, it might not exist next year. But this is definitely something I'll be continuing to think about. It's just not, I don't have any idea for how to make this possible. So it's not going to exist this year. But like I said, it's not a huge loss. The time I spent on this was minimal in retrospect, all things considered. And I have an idea for what I'm going to make next. But yeah, I'd love to see this exist, but not this year. It is day 1 of the next clip, and this one is based on the principle or the motion called the looping pendulum. That's what I've seen it called, at least. I've only seen this motion done in only one other machine trick, and it was in 11 Inventions 9. It was actually pretty hard to tell that that's what is actually happening in the trick, but it's the one where it drops the weight and then the weight spins around the top axle thing. But yeah, like I said, it's only that one trick, and I decided, I don't know why, for a while I thought like, it's been done, I can't do it. But I have a different take on it now, and I think it's totally worth exploring, especially since it's not easy to tell that that's actually what's happening in the 11 Inventions clip. So, what is the idea? And what is the looping pendulum? So, the idea is that there is a light weight, a weight that is lighter on one end, and a weight that's heavy on another end. The fact that there are 2 strings here isn't really relevant, but it is necessary for the trick to work. It's not really part of the principle that I'm demonstrating, but hang on, I just got magnets stuck to the weight. Okay. Oh no, now it's all twisted. Okay, here we go. So it's not perfectly level. I'm again, this is a work in progress. But the idea is you've got the heavy, it's not supposed to do that. You've got the heavy weight on one side, and you've got the light weight on the other side, and you put it over a rod or an axle like this, and when you drop the lighter weight, it'll drop down, as it falls. Whoa. It'll drop as it falls. Very, very, very insightful. And then it goes underneath, and it'll actually wrap around the rod here, and it'll catch the falling weight in midair. So the heavy weight looks like it's going to fall and hit the table, and you'd never guess that it would be totally safe from any harm based on this original setup, but if I let go, there you go. And you can see it catches it in midair, and this starts wrapping around the pole up at the top. So you can sort of start to see the beginnings of a really cool idea here, and you might even be able to guess that the whole point of this setup is that a ball is going to be in here. It's going to actually be in there as it does the whole rotation thing. And then this is going to be a track that, once I fix it, will be upright. And the point is going to be that it stops in a position about like this. I have to really calculate it perfectly, but it should be more like that. There goes the ball. It should be more like about this, so that when it lands, it's perfectly sloped to allow the ball to roll out. And then as the ball rolls out, it should fall like right here at the end. Again, it'll be like this. And then that's where I'll have like a cup to catch the ball, and then the ball will roll across from right to left that way. And that's a cool trick in and of itself, but what I want to do is add some kind of decoration element right underneath here that's like, I don't know why in my head I'm envisioning like a shark tank or like a pit of spikes or something. Just something to sort of humorously convey that like, oh no, it's dangerous down here. And then you see this thing drop, and it's like, oh, it's going to crash into the shark pit. And then all of a sudden it just catches magically by the wrapping motion. So I don't know. I want to have that moment where you're like, oh no, and then it's like, oh, it's safe after all. I don't really know how I'm going to achieve that because I think it's going to be too fast for anyone to really have that moment of surprise. But it'll just be like kind of an instantaneous, sudden, surprising motion, which could be just cool in and of itself. So yeah, I do want to have some kind of arts and crafts decoration element under there. But really, obviously, the first things first, I got to make the trick actually work. So I got to make whatever is over here that releases it. I might even try, if things happen to line up perfectly, I might even try to have the ball roll across this track in the initial position. We'll see. It might not line up right, and it might just be too much machine maintenance to like remove any of the connecting tracks that need to transport it from here into this thing. And then, they have to move away, and then, yeah, so you know how much I dislike machine maintenance. But yeah, we'll see how it turns out. But that's the end of today. Tomorrow I will be adding the catching device onto the track down here. I obviously got to figure out the balancing situation down there. I've got to figure out the release and the exact positioning of the release so that it ends up perfectly angled like that. And then I think probably it'll be a day 3 thing, but I got to figure out the decoration down at the bottom. But yeah, nice progress today. All right, day 2 of the looping pendulum trick, and things are going really well. I flipped the trick around, so it's actually a mirror image of how it was, which was actually really easy to do because this part in the middle didn't need to be flipped at all. It's perfectly identical right down the middle. And then it was just a matter of moving this box from one side to the other, and then you can just drape these over in a different orientation. It's fine. Again, they're also symmetrical. So that was easy. And the reason I did that was just that it would fit better with the transitions. Because doing it like this, obviously, not obviously, I should explain that I have a method of doing something I wanted to do. I mentioned that I wanted to potentially use the track in the original position before the swinging motion. I have figured out a way to do that, and that's going to use this track that goes in the middle and then falls away to make room for the actual swinging motion. And because I want to do this thing, that means the trick starts from left and then goes to the right. So I can have a track like this that doesn't need any machine maintenance to remove, and then a ball can go in. It'll be the yellow ball, rolls in across here, and you'll notice this does hang. The balance of it hangs so that it is actually sloped, so it won't need any kind of propelling motion to go from left to right here, across this track, into here. That'll do some kind of split off that will release the clothespin, and the clothespin is what's holding this all in place. Then the whole thing goes, wee, and then it spins around. The ball, the track ends up sloped here, ball rolls out, lands into this, which is like a pretty basic, pretty elementary funnel catcher device, which works terribly. It does not work very well at all, but I can't make it any taller. I can't make it any more robust because it can't be tall, or else this thing hits it when it swings in this way. So it does work sometimes, and that's fine. I'll just keep doing takes until I get it. Because one thing that I'm surprised about with this clip is that it is surprisingly consistent. I wouldn't say it's reliable yet, because of the things that that can't be reliable, like this, and like potentially the way that the ball rolls out of this. But it is extremely consistent with how this thing wraps around and then where it lands. So yes, I flipped it around because it obviously starts from this side, so it's easier to have a transition on the left side, starting here, and then as it falls into here, rolls across, and then there'll be another track system here, and that'll just go off to the right. So it works way better as a left to right clip than a right to left clip. So I spent today really, really honing in on the exact perfect setup position for making this all work. And it is extraordinarily precise. Like I was saying, it is extremely consistent. And that's good, but it's also bad because it means that if I need to make any kind of micro adjustment, it means I actually have to make an adjustment. I can't just rely on random fluctuations in the way the machine works to give me that tiny change. Like, for example, if I say, oh, that was basically perfect, but this track needs to fall like an extra half centimeter, or like that was perfect, but this track isn't wrapping around far enough and it's a little bit too sloped, I can't just say, well, it looks pretty good, I'll just keep testing until I get the result I'm looking for. Because it is so consistent that will never happen. So any tiny change I want to make, I actually have to change something. And it's been a bit of an experiment trying to figure out what variables actually change stuff. I've found out that actually the spacing of these strings does have a big impact, weirdly enough. Although, oh, there it goes. I was going to reset it and test it, but I don't think that's going to happen at this point. I need two hands to do that. But as I do it, I will try to explain some other stuff. So, what is coming up? What is the next thing I want to try to do? The next thing I want to do is figure out how I'm going to make this track, where'd it go? This track over here, I want to figure out a way to make it fall out of the way so that I can actually, release the ball, goes across, then the track goes underneath, falls away, and then that'll lead, well, I don't know the sequence yet, but that's extremely important. All right, this is reset. I managed to do it. Hopefully it doesn't go by itself. Okay, so ball rolls in here, and like I was saying, it is extremely consistent, but what that means is I was having some trouble with the thing whacking it as it comes in, so it would drop and then just like by just a half a micrometer would glance the side of the track here, and it would collide. And so I've gotten it to a point where it does that sometimes, but when it doesn't, it works perfectly, and that's about as good as I can hope for. So what I'm hoping happens is I press here, it unwinds, wraps around I think 3 times, and lands on the right side of the pole up here with a slight tilt. I don't want it too much. I was having trouble where it would end up like way too too tilted, and the ball would just kind of drop out. I want it to look more like the ball is rolling out, nice and calm, nice and slow, rather than dropping out or falling out. Okay, well, we'll see how this happens. Let's see. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about. It's way too sloped. You see the ball just dropped out, and it didn't make it into here, but that's not even the problem. It's too tilted. It needs to be more like this, where it's like that's what I'm looking for. And I've been trying to make micro adjustments to this over here, the placement of this, and then like I was talking about, the spacing of the strings, and like even down to the weight and the placement of the cup on this track. Like all of these variables seem to have some kind of effect, but I can't seem to hone in on that exact thing I'm looking for. I still have problems where it's ending up like this. So maybe I'll try to figure it out. But it's weird. I mean, it's in a weird situation because I'm so used to this being like totally good enough and being over the moon ecstatic with this. If it does that, I'm like, hooray, it looks pretty good, it'll probably work eventually. It's so weird to be disappointed by a result that's so close to perfection. Because it's so consistent that I need to actually make it perfect. So, all right. Things are going well. Just got to figure out the next thing with the track, and I'm in the home run stretch at this point. It sounds weird to say because I've basically built nothing aside from the main idea, but everything else is just minor connections, I think, assuming I figure out this. All right, it is day 3 of this clip, and we're in the closing stretch, but still not quite done. So you can definitely see a lot of progress has been made with adding some things I was talking about. So this track that bridges the gap between the falling weight and the lighter weight that spins around has been added. I thought originally that maybe it would fold down sort of like this and go this way, But then I realized that if I did that, the track would just sort of be hanging out back here. And you'd sort of see it, but you would just see it as the trick happens. And it would be, maybe you wouldn't necessarily realize that it's not supposed to be part of the trick anymore. Like, I wanted to convey as much as possible, like, this is not important anymore, don't pay attention to it. So visually having it come down this way, and it's not exactly flush against the side here, but it is close enough that it pretty clearly conveys, like, this track is done, don't pay attention to it anymore, it's not going to be used again. That's what I really wanted to convey. And I didn't really think that was going to be conveyed as clearly if it fell this way. So there's also this stuff down here. I'll test the trick in a second. It should work. Fingers crossed. I figured out some of the issues. But I realized that even though it's consistent enough that I very well could have a track, like when this falls and it gets suspended in midair and it stops itself hanging right in midair, I could have a track that is positioned perfectly right at the exact height that it stays put and just have the ball roll off and then onto that other track. But I didn't want to do that because I didn't want it to look like the other track is getting caught somehow in any sort of way. Like, I need to be very clear that it's falling and getting caught by the wrapping motion up here. Nothing else. And if I had it fall and then join right up against another track down here, you might think or assume that there's something catching it on that track, even though there isn't. So it was pretty imperative that the track stays somewhat isolated in its down position. So it's a little bit unimpressive from the perspective that I would have liked to show off that it's really accurate and you can make the height really predictable and really consistent. But I don't think it's really possible because, I don't want to have people assume that it's controlled, like the height is controlled because it's latching into place or something. But anyway, so once the ball goes off the second time from left to right here, falls into here, goes around, and then this nonsense is just to make the transitions work. Because we're late enough in the video production phase now where I have to work around the things I've already committed to in other clips. If this were like the first trick I built, obviously I would just have the ball roll out of frame, and I wouldn't have to switch to a different ball that rolls out of frame. But anyway, I've also added the connections for the clothespin. I've decided to have the track actually knock off the weight that releases the clothespin to give a little bit of an added delay. But yeah, let's do a test. Let's see how this works. So this track is new as well, but here we go. Hey, that was perfect. Nice. Yeah, usually this part works now with the wrapping, but sometimes it, like I was saying in the previous updates, the actual catching mechanism here is a little bit less reliable. But that's one of those things that is, just try it until it works. Unlike some of the other things I was talking about where it was so consistent that I had to actually make adjustments to get it to be perfect. So a one-off test for the update is a good sign, I think. But what is there still left to do? I still have to make the transition in, which I have to match one of these domino lines. And then I have to make, I'm still considering putting some decoration down here, some like little spikes or danger signs or something. So we'll see. I think the trick looks fine without it, but I do like the idea, so I might play around with it. But I'll have to see how much time I actually have. The other thing that I'm not a huge fan of with this clip is that it really does not fit in frame in the camera. I've set up the tripod here already, and I can kind of approximate the positioning. It's like around here-ish, and I need a bunch of headroom basically because as the cup thing spins around, it doesn't just, like, I can't just cut off the top of the frame here, right? Because I need to make room for when it spins. So, you know, it needs to be around here, which means there's a lot of dead space on the left side, and it makes the track transition on the right really hard to work around. Plus, it makes the camera further away than I'd like. It actually almost works better as a vertical video. But anyway, I'll make it work. We are in the closing stretch. This will be the last update for this one. All right, it is day one of the spinning gears with timing tracks trick. And this is an idea that, I don't know, it didn't look like amazingly cool in my head, but even making it, it's even less cool than I thought it would be. But it's okay. It's the first like actual trick in the video after the sort of anagram generator thing, which is like a special clip. So this is the first real normal machine clip in the video. So it's okay if it's a little bit simpler. It's a little bit more, it gets you into eases you into the pace of things. But the idea basically is you can have a ball that kind of rolls up a track and then back down again. And if you have it on a gear and time it up just right, you can have it roll onto a gear and then it spins, and actually the centrifugal force will actually keep it sort of pinned up against the back wall here. You can see there's a little stick. So it'll like it won't actually roll down the track when the gear is moving. So it can roll on, then the gear rotates, and then once the gear gets into its position, it rolls back down, and then it repeats that by rolling onto the next track on the next gear, and so on and so forth. And I think repeating it 3 times is rule of 3 is a good number. And I decided to do it in this kind of L-shaped pattern so that it can actually roll in from the left here and then out at the front. And adding this extra dimension to it gives a little bit more variety and allows me to make each rotation 270 degrees of rotation, which gives it a bit of a third dimension. Instead of doing it 180 degrees and just having it go straight down a line where it rolls up, rotates 180 degrees, and then rolls down, rolls up, rotates 180 degrees, rolls down, rolls up, 180, and so on, and just works its way down a straight line. It's a little bit interesting when it does like this loopy pattern where it's sort of like that. But even then, it's a little bit of a boring trick. So what I have built so far is actually quite a lot for one day. We've got the 3 tracks on the 3 gears on the 3 tracks. They all rotate. They're all mounted on these supports. They've got all that stuff worked out. And then back here is kind of the part that took the most time, is figuring out how it's all controlled. Because again, the problem, or not again, I haven't told you this at all. The problem with tricks with gears is that they need something powering them. And oftentimes, if there's a lot of rotation, it means you need a wheel with a pulley string, which hasn't been built yet. But you have to sort of gear it down so that, especially with tricks where the gears start and stop repeatedly, it's a lot easier to do that with a movable arm that goes like this and has different incrementations along the way, rather than something that spins, a full 360 degrees multiple times. Because then, if you need to have something stopping it, it can't be in the way on the previous rotations. Whereas here, you just have 3 consecutive blocks that get removed consecutively. Very easy. And that's because I geared it down. There's a small gear here, big gear here. This is going to have a string wrapped around it, I think. And then this is just the extension arm that will have blocks in front of it. So anyway, this is how the trick looks, sort of hand-powered, if I can do it. So it rolls on here. Oh, let's get the timing. Here. Oh, this is not easy. Here, rotates. Here, rotates. Here, rotates basically like that. It's not as it'll be more precise, obviously. Wait, did I not even do it right? I don't know. Anyway, it'll be more precise. Obviously, the tracks will line up when I actually put in blocks here. But yeah, for now, this is what I have. It's nothing super exciting, but it is well made, I think. And once the actual controls for starting the rotation or starting and stopping the rotation, once that's added, and then once the in track and out track are added with the transitions for the clips, it'll look a bit more complete. But yeah, simple little one. Nice to get one that's not super difficult at this point in the production process for this video. Still one more to make after this. And if this one comes together quickly, I'll have a nice bit of time to make that one. Yeah. All right, day 2 of the up and down gear track things. And the part that I've added today is some connections, but also back here, the actual timing system that's powering the whole thing in this kind of emergent pattern of this radial design. And I say emergent because it was never really intentional, but due to the nature of where these stoppers have to be placed, these little white rods here pop up, and this red rod, I think I had this built for the last update, but the red rod is what rotates around, and it gets caught behind each of these, here, here, and starts here, at certain intervals, and those are the proper intervals for the track orientations. So, because they're in this arc shape, these stoppers are in an arc shape, which means that the dominoes that pull the stoppers out are also in an arc shape. And then, just to make sure the timing is perfect, I needed something slow enough, so a ball rolling wouldn't work. And I guess I glossed over it a little bit. I made it sound like, oh, just a simple decision to make. But really, it was a little bit of a tough decision as to how I was going to power all of these things. I figured right from the start that stoppers were the right way to go, but I didn't really have a great idea for how it would be done, because they'd need 3 separate string pulls to activate them, and some kind of timing system that would activate them at the proper moments. And I really did not want to do ball on track as this whole connection system in the back, because you'd need connections to release each of the consecutive balls, and they'd also have split offs to release these, and it would just be very distracting, and just a whole big pain to make, honestly. So I decided to go back to what I did for the timing trick, or timing, not trick, but timing, I don't know, the way that I achieved the timing I needed for that one trick I made earlier, the one with the collapsing zigzag tracks, the one where with the fake out, the accident. I used a train, the motorized battery train, to achieve a decent slow pace for the balls getting released. And here, the timing needs to be a bit more precise, but it did just happen to kind of work out, where as it goes around this arc shape and knocks over these dominoes that were, again, the positioning of them was pre-decided, right? So normally you'd pick the pace, the timing, you'd pick the timing, and then you'd position the dominoes at the right places so that the timing is perfect. Whereas here, the dominoes were pre-placed, and I had to find something that was the perfect speed, which is obviously the wrong way around, but I lucked out, and the train was basically the perfect speed. So I am very lucky that happened to work out. Anyway, all that is to say, these stoppers are what powers the intervals for the rotating gears, and I've also put in the track leading in, and I was initially concerned that maybe this track would block the view of everything, and it obviously would if you film it from here, but I'm thinking the filming is going to be from more up here, right? So this trick is one of those that can actually be filmed from a pretty high up overhead angle, and it doesn't need to be like way back here like this, like some of my taller ones. You know, it can be pretty much like this, which means that the track doesn't block anything. Well, a little bit of the first block here, but that's fine. So there is still some left to do, but this will probably be the last update. The last things I still have to make are just the rest of the track leading in for the transition, and then the transition out. And this will transition into the third machines clip, so I need to make some kind of transition with a metal ball on the this type of track here. So I don't know exactly how, but it'll probably just be very simple, some kind of lever release or domino thing. Yeah, nothing too complicated. Yeah. All right, that's this clip. All right, it is day one of the final Dominoes versus Machines clip, and this update is a bit of a strange one because, as of recording this, it is Halloween. It is October 31st, and today is, I like to be the last day of building, so I have a couple days of edit before posting on the 3rd. So that means I have to basically one-shot this whole trick in one day. So I'm doing an update early on in the day that you can see there's still light out, so just so at least there isn't only one update for this clip. So not a ton of progress. Just by looking at the table, you can't even really tell what I'm thinking of here. Although if you've seen the final video, I bet you could probably tell what this materializes into. But this idea is an idea I've had for a while, but in a very basic form. The idea was sort of a vertical zigzag board. You can sort of see the remnants of that here. And a ball obviously rolls down it, and as it goes down, it obviously moves from left to right, right? And because the ball is heavy, it has weight, I was thinking that that could be used to actually tilt the entire board, right? So sort of like a, you know, if it pivots at the bottom, right, as it rolls to the left side, it tilts to the left, and then you know, it's still sloped enough so that the ball could still make it back towards the right, but then when it falls onto the right side, it tilts it to the right. So that was the idea, and then I had this idea that maybe if I had it with an extension arm off the side or something that could like oscillate up and down, and that might lift balls or push a track or who knows. That was the idea. I talk about this a lot, the idea of concept versus trick. That was the concept. I had a concept where a vertical zigzag board could cause tilting back and forth. But I didn't have an idea for what the tilting could actually do. And when I sat down and thought about it, I realized that the main problem with this was that the trick that actually happened as a result of the oscillation, the tilting back and forth, would need to be sort of self-contained or at least self-referential within this itself, and it couldn't just power some other unrelated thing. Like you could imagine that arm that extends off the side could be used to like push a sequence of balls or something, but I didn't think that was that interesting. And it could also do something like knock over a track or something like with some kind of track trick it could power. But the problem with that is that it becomes less clear what the actual point of the trick is. Then you start to think like, oh, is the trick the whole track thing, and then this is just the method of powering it? Or is this the trick, and then the tracks are just there to sort of demonstrate this? Now, that would have been the right answer. The tracks were the side thing just to demonstrate this, but it would be unclear. So what I like about this idea, actually I haven't explained what my idea is yet. So my idea is to use that oscillation as an escapement mechanism, which is kind of the mechanism used for like manual pendulums to make like grandfather clocks, and like it's used a lot for like timing mechanisms or just like energy storage. It's a really slow release of energy. But anyway, the idea is that you have sort of a rocker arm that locks into position in either rotation. So it locks into position here and then locks into position here. But as it does, it's able to make its way around. And if you don't know what it is, it's really hard to describe and visualize. But if you do know what it is, I'm over-explaining it. But the idea is to use that on a sliding platform. So the platform itself, which is going to be this is the tilting board. And then this is going to be vertically mounted on top of this, right? And then this will be on wheels, and then this will be on a board that might be tilted, it might not be. I might just use a weight to pull it along, I don't know yet. But then this will be, then the extension arms off of this will come off of the left and the right. I mean, I'm trying to walk myself through this just as much as I'm trying to explain it. So that's that, and then as it makes its way, it wants to make its way from left to right. Either it's rolling downhill or it's being pulled somehow, and it works its way down in increments. So the escapement mechanism helps it kind of go along at a slow pace in increments like that as the ball goes from left to right. Hopefully that's a decent enough explanation. But yeah, that's where we're at. So right now I have to make sort of the vertical zigzag board itself. These are not actually attached. These are just there to sort of sketch it out, see how many iterations or see how many left and rights I could get on the board. This was, I'm just thinking about board dimensions. This was another option I had. I've been looking at all my other board sizes and everything, trying to think of how I'm going to support it. Do I need a front panel to keep the board in or to keep the ball in, or can I just tilt the inside tracks enough? Those Domino Rally vertical zigzag boards don't actually have a front panel. Obviously, that's how you get the ball in. And they don't need it because the tracks inside, like the sloped parts, are sloped like up and inward to keep the ball against the back side. So I might try to do that, but the ball is really heavy and it's also tilting back and forth and moving left to right. So that might be just enough compound motion that'll just jostle free, and I might need a front panel, in which case I can make one with clear plastic. But yeah, this is less of an update and more of me just kind of walking through it in my own head. But yeah, I think this will work. I really like this idea, and like I was talking about this idea of being self-contained, and I think this is a really smart and clever way of doing that, because it's not just the board oscillation trick, but it's using that as the method of propulsion for the ball itself. It's like the ball is using that oscillation left to right to transport the ball from one place to another. So it's like we were talking about, the board is able to move using the escapement mechanism, and it's able to move from left to right. And so it's like the ball is traveling in the car and it's driving the car forward it's cool. I think it's a really smart, like, self-referential way of doing it, where it doesn't involve any extra machinery. It's just using the motion of the tilting in a self-contained way, so that is very clearly the point of the trick. And the other thing I was thinking of that might be possible, maybe, is to put a lighter ball through it first, right, to really drive the point home. So, like, obviously the ball will enter and exit the board, and the heavy one, the one that actually tilts the board, is able to move the platform. So in effect, the ball is able to be transported from one place to another. But if the ball's not heavy enough, the board won't actually move. So I'm thinking I might put like one of these balls through it first. Like one of these cheap balls, not like the eyeball maybe, I don't know. And then that won't move the platform, but it'll make its way through the zigzag board. That will trigger the heavy ball to go through, and then the board will start moving, and then it'll be like this cool compare and contrast sort of thing. So I'm excited about this, but obviously I have to make it all in one day. No problems yet, but I've gotten not that far into it. So we'll see how it goes. All right, it is still day one of the zigzag board car thing, but I've made a lot of progress, so I figured I'd do another update. So I've built the zigzag board. This is now done, and what I'm working on now is figuring out the escapement mechanism for actually propelling it. Yeah, it's harder than I thought it would be, mostly because of the one in the back. The one in the front, not so much, but in the back, like, you have the thing, here, right? And then there's the stopper on the, forget about that for now, and the stopper on the board itself. But when it hits it, it just kind of wants to tilt and then go right by, which like, of course. So I don't know how I'm going to fix that. But what I have done is I've changed the marble, or at this point it's a full ball. It's not really a marble that's going through it. It used to be this marble, but it's not heavy enough. So I've changed it to this really heavy steel ball. The logic for that being that the more weight you shift from side to side, the more stable it is in each position. And if it's more stable in each position, it's going to be less likely to just blow by these little blocks that are supposed to block it and prevent it from rolling. That's the idea. So we'll see if that actually ends up working. But I have completed this part. So if I can like hold the whole thing still, we can sort of see how that works. But I know, good luck with that. Yeah, so the other thing I've done is put it on a slope, because I figured that since I've already done one trick earlier, the Anagram Translator one, where there's a similar, wheel-driven car thing that gets pulled along with a tape measure, I wanted to do something that doesn't look quite as visually similar. So I decided to do this one where it rolls down an incline. And I I knew I had these, but it's a wooden board, but it's got these grooves in it, which are perfect for putting the wheels in and constraining the wheels. And this wooden board is actually a shelf from this shelving unit, which I got the shelf because it was a nice, glass case in the front. You could see through it and store materials. And a side benefit ended up being that these wooden boards are really useful. I already used one once in centrifugal force tricks. Although the grooves in that one were not really crucial for that trick. But yeah, I'll see if I can put it down. So it's not really going to work at all. I'll try to just hold it, I guess. Okay. Yeah, no, I can't. I cannot. I can't do it with one hand because it just wants to roll. But trust me, this part works. It's just figuring out the escapement mechanism, and then that'll be pretty much the last major hurdle, I think. But I have no idea how long that is going to take to figure out. That could really take a lot of time and be quite the hassle. We'll see. Okay, still day one, and the trick is completed. So, that was a successful mission. So, what did I do since the last update? Well, the escapement mechanism is complete, is working. There are 2 of these blocks on this side for the front catcher, and there are 2 underneath on the back side for the back catcher. There's also a starting position and an ending position. So the starting position is here, and there's a tiny, tiny fraction of the popsicle stick that's holding this in place, and that's just to hold it in a sort of in between the extremes state. You can see here that there's still some space under there, and there's still, well, there's supposed to be some space under there. But this is the perfect positioning for the first ball, which I've changed to this tricks track ball because it doesn't bounce quite as much when it hits these. So this is the positioning for the first ball to go through, which of course doesn't tilt anything. And then I'll see if this works. It does work, but it's one of those things where sometimes it doesn't. And it'll just be an instance of trying to get the right take and just doing it until I get a take I like. But let's see. So I roll this down, and it should, every time it enters a new level, right? So including the top here, and including when it goes into the track too, the whole mechanism should tilt. And that should allow it to continue further and further down the track. So let's see. That was so bad, like not even a little bit close. That's what it does sometimes. Other times, it works perfectly. So just to give you an idea, that's what we're dealing with. I mean, not really, not perfect at all. Not. That wouldn't be a take I would be acceptable. That would be acceptable, but it's the general idea. Yeah. So some of them went early, and it was sort of just tipping at random. There was really no rhyme or reason to it. But again, that's the concept. So, yeah, this one went together really nicely. I'm really happy with the idea. I'm really happy with the execution of it. I'm really happy with, like, yeah, I mean, the look of it, the aesthetics of it. I'm happy with the, like, I'm happy that it's a good trick that I managed to do. And it doesn't at all look like something I made in only a day, right? At least not compared to any of the other ones. You wouldn't pick it out of the bunch and say, well, that one clearly had less effort put into it. So that's really the biggest thing. I guess the other thing to mention is just this monstrosity, this giant tall tower that is used just to support this track. And because a giant metal ball is rolling into it, I can't just, glue it or tape it. There has to be a bit of extra specialness to make it reinforced. So I actually use screws for this, both down here and up here. And because I don't want to screw into the tricks track, I have to have like a long wooden piece here, which is the Jenga block, so that I have enough surface area to tape to that. And this is working. I guess I should also show behind the scenes. There are weights attached to the back of this, and that's just to provide counterweight for the tricks track segments that are on this side. There are these brackets here, which are just right angle 90-degree brackets that are helping to support the entire board and make sure it doesn't wobble back and forth. And yeah, I guess that's it. The interesting thing about escapement mechanisms is that the one in the back has to actually be tilted slightly inwards, so the angle is slightly less than 90 degrees. And that's just so that it doesn't, when it hits it, it doesn't just want to jump right over, even though that is still a problem I'm having. Yeah, so this is, that's about all there is to say about this one, I think. Yeah.